There we go. We
All
good
right,
now?
we got it.
I'm stupid. I forgot to hit the join audio button. I was just dumb.
Oh, I've done that before, where you just kind of
Yeah,
quickly to get through something, and you expect the the default to be audio, right? Yeah, I mean,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, the joint audio makes no
yeah.
sense. There's video. I can see you. It's not muted, whatever. But anyways, man. So yeah.
All right. So, oh, I always forget to look at which episode this is. It's got to be 34. The 34th episode of the mental breakthrough.
Okay.
So, yeah, what I've really enjoyed doing these free form, long discussion. We can go anywhere, but I do like having a starting point and then kind of going back, getting some life history and going forward. But I like to introduce you as I know you through Kiet at
Right.
at Sac State when I was training for some of my fights. He had you, and then that tall guy. To me, you and Kiet, he was extremely tall. He might
you're talking about Dan. You're talking about
5'11".
Dan. Yeah.
What?
Dan, my buddy Dan Pearson, right?
Dan Pearson. Yeah, Dan. Yeah. So yeah,
I think Dan's like 6 foot tall.
Okay.
So for you and I and Kit, he's tall. He's a big dude.
He's huge.
He's a solid like 180, 185. So if you and Kit and I were lightweights at 130, 135, he's like a middleweight, welterweight, right?
Yeah.
So
to us, he's just a monster. I remember him I feeling like a monster. Yeah. I mean, yeah. But so I mean, that was such an amazing. I mean, we can talk about like that era was really amazing with martial arts coming up. I mean, you guys coming in, just getting that's what it was. That's what training was. Yeah. Just different groups sharing what we know. We all know different things. We all came from different backgrounds. So I mean, I guess it's a good place to start. Is just how you got into martial arts, and then sure. Kind of leading up. Basically, take me through your life until that first day. I don't even know if you were how you so take me up until we met. Sure.
I'll do maybe. So first off, I'll do sequentially mostly, but like to go with your point, I met Kit. I'll explain how that happened. Kit and I have been trained together, with Dan and this is a friend of mine, Mark Gullickson. I think you worked out a couple with Mark. Remember, he's older, but he's a really thick guy. Remember, really strong. Remember, he's about our height, but like built like an NFL lineman. He was a good wrestler. Guy.
Yeah, I think
he was like 10 years older than me, so he maybe more. So he was when I was in my late 30s working out with you. Mark was like 50. If you remember him now, shaved head.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So there was us working out. We met Kit, and then that's how we hooked up with you at Sac State. So to roll it way back. And I'll go through it as fast as I can, and we can touch on it more in detail. So back in the 80s, right, when I was like 1984, so I'm like 14 years old, to give you a feel for the perspective here, right? Pre-MMA, not even on the radar, right?
Oh, yeah. That's Karate Kid era, or even Karate Kid era. I mean, that's
absolutely. Bruce Lee was still a thing, even though he was dead, right?
Yeah.
And the way the world was back then, it's super bizarre when you think about it now. If you wanted to be a fighter, you didn't wrestle and you didn't box. You did martial arts. You did karate or whatever. And also, youth wrestling was not a thing in California at that time. The first time you could wrestle was freshman year in high school. So, you're like a young kid and you want to fight. Well, you know what I mean? You want to do a combat sport.
Yeah.
There's no, now there's wrestling everywhere, in America. But back then it was only the Midwest where there was like kids wrestling.
Yeah. Iowa or something.
Yeah. But, like even, I know you grew up in Orville, not Orville, but like you have a city up there, right? There was
Orville, actually. Yeah. Orville. Yeah. We didn't have a wrestling. I didn't wrestle until high school. Yeah. There were some people that, out of Chico or something. So there were some people that did it, but basically, even and that was in the 90s. I didn't have that opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. And then boxing was always like an inner city sport. There wasn't boxing outside of like one or two places in downtown Sacramento. So, like there's probably no boxing up in Orville or Chico, right? There was none up there. No boxing gyms.
Right? I didn't know of any. No, I know.
Yeah. So I'm like 14, kind of want to know how to fight. So I kind of checked out the karate schools, and I found a Kempo school, Chinese Tracy or Chinese Kempo, whichever phrase you want to call it. But the point is And you go around to all of them, they had like the Shotokan guys and Taekwondo guys, and then you had the Kempo guys. And I am not going to defend Kempo because I don't think it's super effective. But in the sales pitch or the world, Kempo was about fighting. It was like, we don't get into lots of this stuff. We learn how to fight. You know what I mean? It's like guys throw a right hand punch and you mess them up in all these ways. Or a guy grabs your wrist, you mess them up. Versus doing like all the katas. And they had katas, but you know.
So where was this? What city or where were you?
That's actually in Roseville, Citrus Heights. So yeah.
Okay.
And there was a decent number of Kempo schools around town.
I was gonna say, did you ever? Because that's what I was up in Orville and I was doing Chinese Kempo, and then they said I didn't really understand. Then they said, oh, it's Kosho Ru or something. And then
I can tell you all about that, dude.
Yeah, we came down to this thing called The Gathering, actually in Rockland. It was across the street from Sierra College.
And that would be Bruce. That would be Bruce Jetnick's part of it.
Bruce. So he was like our head guy, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
So here's I worked out with Bruce and stuff. Oh, here's the deal, right?
Yeah. So
you had Kempo, and we can go way back to we'll circle back. It's going to be an interesting history thing on Kempo. It's just kind of funny, and none of it really. I mean, it matters, but it was such a thing. So, because like the martial arts kind of a lot of times took on like a religious element to it, right? Which is always to me kind of annoying, you know, because really I want to fight. But here's how it goes. So you had this guy James Ponzo in Hawaii.
Okay, yeah,
he knew a little bit of stuff, and I've done all kinds of research on him, and it's super funny. But the point is he knew some stuff, and he taught Ed Parker and a guy named Chow. And Chow went and founded Kaja Kempo, which was big in the Bay Area. And then Ed Parker learned from him a little bit and learned from Chow. And then Ed Parker came to America and did American Kempo. And then what happened is he taught, and he became pretty big. I mean, like to give you an example, Elvis did American Kempo. Elvis doing his karate and all that stuff. That's all American Kempo. And then what happened is a guy that Al Tracy was one of Parker's top guys, and they had a falling out. So Al Tracy went his way, and that was Tracy Kempo. But what happened is, to make it more marketable, he said Chinese Kempo, because first there was Japanese martial arts. Kempo's mostly Japanese, and then because it's a Japanese word, and they say Kung Fu's cool because of Bruce Lee. We're the Chinese Kempo guys. We got more Kung Fu going on. Yeah. Come to our gym. And that's literally what happened, right? And then so that was like the 70s thing. So you had American Kempo and Tracy did their split. Then Bruce, but there was all this money being made. It was kind of like jiu-jitsu. BJJ was in the 90s and early 2000s. Kempo schools just opened up everywhere because people, I think at their core, people always wanted MMA but didn't know it. So you're some guy, you're a physical guy. You know, I mean, I say that. Let's say you're like a construction worker guy. You're like, I don't want to learn a bunch of pinyons and do Shotokan all day. I know that doesn't work when I get in a bar fight, right? I mean, right in their head, they just know that. But they're like, oh, your martial arts is, you go to choke me and I do a technique and I break your arm or something. You know what I mean? So like, look, this makes more sense. I'm just telling you kind of what happened. So Kempo just exploded. And then it was all about having the top technique or the top traceability, because the problem with Kempo was it didn't have that legitimate lineage back to like Kano or somebody like that. It was just made by some American guys, right? So they're always so the traditional Japanese guys or Kung Fu guys would be like, your art's made up, it means nothing. My art comes from the Shaolin Temple. My art comes from the Shotokan headquarters in Japan, right? You see what I mean? So guys like Tracy and Parker were always, well, not Parker so much, but Tracy were always trying to invent this legitimacy. And that's where Matosi and Kosho Ru comes in, because Jetnick and those guys had their own deal where they all want to be in charge because no one wants to work for anybody. So he said, oh, look, I'm going to bypass all this. And James Matosi was put in prison for committing murder in Folsom Prison in Sacramento. But because he was the guy that taught Parker and taught Chow, they went and visited him in prison. And he said, oh, you guys are 8th, 9th degree black belts in Kosho Ru Kempo. And then Jetnick could claim this legitimacy and had this like organization, which you saw a piece of when you were young.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting.
It's super funny.
Well, because so I'm in Orville. I had first I don't know. First I trained under Guy Bercali, and then Robert Alcorn, who were both really knowledgeable and taught me a lot of stuff that I actually think made me a better fighter in MMA in the long run. You know, just because you drill hand-eye coordination, you know, you do stuff. I think there's legitimate techniques in both of those. Plus, Robert Alcorn, who taught me, he did hit wrestle and box a little bit, so he'd tie in. So like you said, and everyone did. We really wanted MMA, and we were always just like at the end of practice, we would do like submission wrestling, but we didn't know jujitsu. It was just like naturally came to us, and we'd throw punches, but obviously we'd go soft. So it's funny that we were doing those kind of things. But then I remember when I changed from Guy Bracali, we were called Chinese Kempo, and then when Robert Alcorn took over, we did then we were introduced to the Jay Matoshi line or something. So I think he had some connection to Bruce, and then they taught it as all of the technique that came to him, like meditating under a tree in Hawaii. Was he from Hawaii or something though? Or
he was a Japanese guy. He was born in Japan, but he emigrated to Hawaii. That's my recollection. He was born in Japan, and he emigrated to Hawaii when he was young. Because you remember how in like the 1920s, a ton of Japanese just came from Japan to Hawaii. So that's my memory. Is that was the deal. I could be wrong. If somebody watches this and gets all mad, maybe his parents were from Hawaii, from Japan. He was born in Hawaii, but my recollection is he came over. You know, like Motobu and all those guys were trying to come to America at the same time, right? So he was kind of, but he claimed, And the problem too with Kosho was it got all philosophical, and they had like on the 3 levels. You have level 1 is like, ultra violent. Level 2 is I just do joint strikes, and level 3 is I just do total evasion. And like got all like for guys that didn't really want to get hit in the head, you could pretend you knew how to defend yourself. I think is kind of what it was. Yeah. And it had this. And so Kosho really went out there into becoming a religious thing, I think, like when you read it,
Yeah.
And there's a sideline. This is a total trivia, but it's super funny. So you remember those Kempo techniques you learned? I mean, not to remember, there's a ton of them. Oh, yeah, it's kimono grab.
Kimono grab, boom. Under, over, out. That's main one, right?
Literally, there was, at least the Tracy version I learned, there was 120... No, more than that. No, there's more than that. There was like 200 and something base techniques with variations. So it was like 600 total to get a black belt. Insane numbers of moves,
Yeah.
But what's funny is a friend of mine whose dad was a Marine in World War II had this book, and it was the Military Self-Defense Handbook from like 1944. And when you open it up, the techniques they have is like the first 3 manuals from Kempo. They literally just were guys who were in the military and took the self-defense manuals from the military's handbook in the 40s. Super funny. And they're actually not that bad. They're kind of like wrestling and boxing mixed, Guys grab you and it's like bulldog throw, to punch in the head. You know what I mean? Like they're actually not that bad. Those early ones you might have learned, it's pretty funny when you see it, because you're like, oh wow, that's where it came from. This military manual. But they claimed it was from Japan and it's inspiration, from wherever.
That's funny. I mean, doing one of the things. I mean, one of the things is just like reaction. Somebody grabs you, react. Don't freeze up. And that's one of the main. I mean, the tiny things that I got from karate are actually key. Another one is I like the straight punches when you're wearing MMA gloves. Actually, a nice straight karate punch right down the middle can be a little more effective than kind of some boxing rounded punches. So I mean, we can make fun of a lot of this stuff because there were so many funny things. Some of the characters in my JoJo are so funny. These guys that would come in but that's what it was. Yeah, that's
what you had, right?
Yeah.
And when I will touch on something too. Something that I think for MMA that karate did well, or Kempo in my experience, was you're right, because you didn't wear a lot of gloves. You really didn't have whereas boxing, you wrap that hand up and you have the big glove. You can get sloppy with the wrist and stuff, right? And the knuckle placement. But you're right. When you do, even though, don't get me wrong, you take a boxer against a traditional karate guy, the boxer probably wins. But he'll also destroy his hand probably. He won't be able to punch for like 6 months. But what karate does get you, like you said, is the straight punch, focus on the knuckles. I did a lot of Makawari training too later, to where I punched a lot of Makawari, where you get to where you can punch full power, and not mess your hand up, and that is a valuable thing that I think is missing from MMA and for sure from boxing, and Muay Thai, because they wrap their hands too. I get why.
Yeah. Traditionally they didn't. They'd wrap it with rope or something, but they changed it. Yeah. but yeah,
but yeah, so I did that, you know, and like you said, so there was that, and so, but always like in my head there was the I want to. Oh, and I'm gonna say I trained with the Dave Kovar. You know, if you've heard of him around Sacramento. I trained with Dave Kovar. I trained with the guy named Ray Aquila. You know, so I trained with like the guys in SAC that were like the known tempo guys. They were the good schools where, you know, they were better than the other ones. But then as time went on, you know, a couple things happened. First, before the world changed with the UFC, which was 93, 94, right? Which means I've been training for like 10, 11 years, right? I already had a black belt and stuff, you know, right? You know, it was always about like trying to figure out what worked. In Kempo itself, the techniques, there's a lot of flaws to them. I did a little bit of boxing. I was fortunate. There wasn't much around, but I did a little bit. And I learned a decent amount from boxers. Boxers are very good. Besides the mechanics of punching, I think boxers are still the best, the culture of boxing at like the ring generalship, you know, the strategy of fighting.
Yeah.
You know, a really good boxer, a really good corner man. Those are the guys that are like, this is what you do. Control the ring. Do this. Cut up, you know, right? And they're the best at that, you know, because like I'm not ripping on wrestlers or Muay Thai guys, but you don't have that in between rounds with the coaching and the strategy. And wrestling, you know, wrestling is a tournament. You show up, you know you're fighting, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, but in boxing, they're going, here's my fight, here's my guy, you know, right? Get a plan together. Your coaches, if they're good, they're like, here's what you're good at. We're going to exploit this. You know what I mean? And the fights are longer, right? Because I mean, wrestling, they're always 3-rounders, right?
Yeah. And you can.
Whereas you get into like longer boxing matches, there's a lot of ebb and flow. Anyway, so that part of boxing, I got out of a lot of the good coaches were like, this is what you do. You know, this is what you don't. You know, you're fighting the left. You're fighting the lefty. You're right-handed fighting the lefty, or vice versa. Open stance. You got to move like this. Here's why. You know, it was the science, the sweet science. It's for a reason. I know wrestling's scientific too, but boxing, I think they're a little more upfront about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, but like then I was like, man, I really want to know if this stuff works, and I want to adapt to where it works. So I got a job as a bouncer. So I worked at a nightclub. You know, at our size, you know, I'm 130 pounds, 105-pound boxer. You know, I mean, martial arts bouncer. You know, right? That was always funny because you know most doormen, and I get it. Most bars want a big guy to deter people. Yeah. So I wasn't going to deter anybody because I was small. A lot of guys thought they could take me, so it was on. Whereas if I was a big old dude, they wouldn't have done anything, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was great experiences because, like you'd mentioned about the immediacy, you know, that's what I learned either from watching guys get in bar fights and having to break it up, or the ones I got in myself. You realize a couple things. A lot of times people don't realize they're in a fight. You watch two guys go, and I'm going, oh, that dude's going to get hit, but the dude in the right doesn't realize he's in a fight right now. He thinks they're talking or arguing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you quickly learn
it's funny being so yeah. You were sober being sober at a bar is something I've actually only experienced a couple times in my life. Yeah. And yeah, it is funny how the dynamics of watching people. I mean, weird things. I remember one time the energy is so weird. I remember like the sound of a spoon falling in this corner will start a fight in this corner. It's so weird. So I got good at that. You get a feel for the, you know, all those things that you don't learn from training that you learn. If you grow up in a bad neighborhood getting in fights all the time, you'll learn it too, right? But I had to go learn it on the job, you know. But like, you know, those things where guys set their shoulders a certain way or they turn a certain way, you go, this punch is coming now, you know, right? And then all those things that guys say in martial arts but don't understand. Control the center line. Do this. They say all this stuff and don't really understand it. But you learn that in real fights. You know, like, you know, and boxing does it all the time. And when I wrestled, I never really, you know, I wrestled with you and some other guys. I never wrestled on a team, but like the same rules apply. It's body mechanics. You know, you don't turn your shoulder too far. There's all these things, but the martial arts don't show you that. It's the combat sports. Or combat itself that you learn that, you know, you learn like, oh man, I overcommitted and the guy got outside my shoulder, you know, right? And then I got out of it because it was a fight, but that wasn't too awesome. You know, like you learn these things, which were really great lessons, you know, right? And so that was, so I did that, you know, right? Where I did the bouncing thing. And then I kept training, you know, and the bouncing made, I would say, my tempo better, if you want to put it that way, because I had a better window into reality. Because I'll say this too,
a lot of my fights, even before I didn't know how to grapple, you ended up tied up with the guy, right? I know how to wrestle. I did not know how to wrestle. And I mean, and we know that from MMA. You say, oh, I'm going to use my anti-grappling. You know, like in the old days, I'm not going to let you take me down. It's like, you can say that, dude, but in reality, I got to be a pretty good wrestler to stop you from taking me down.
Yeah,
I can't be not a wrestler. And so that was probably always in my head because the fights got muddied and ugly. You know, they weren't clean, like the techniques, you know, guy throws a punch and you do whatever. And they always got kind of a little muddy after the initial contact. And then the UFC happened, and we all, I mean, remember, I had been training 10, 11 years. I was relatively senior in the world of martial arts. I knew a lot of people around town. And it was such a, you know, and I know everybody knows this, but you got to remember at the time, it was such a worldview change. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're like, wow, look at this, you know, all these martial arts styles that we all argued who's better, Shotokan, you know, Isshin-ryu, Kempo, Ninjutsu. Ninjutsu was a big thing too, right? Ninjutsu was, they're going to kill you. Ninjutsu was probably Kempo's biggest competition, really, you know, in the world. But like, none of it mattered, right? None of it mattered. What you saw was, as you remember the first UFCs, some kickboxers did pretty good until they met the grapplers, right? Like on the striking side, it was all Muay Thai or like guys like Maurice Smith, who were like, basically Muay Thai guys, but American. You know, they threw American style punches, but knew how to kick right. Because you know, the other thing too, which I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but like American style kicks were like not great either, right? Muay Thai kicks are the good ones. You know, but like that, you know, so like there was like, so even the American fighters maybe had good hands, but their kicks weren't that good. So, anyways, then you're like, then you get in the mode of first, you know, like everything that's new in life. First, you're in denial. You say, well, that's just that. That's that. They didn't have the right karate guys in there. That's not real. You know, because that's the first thing. Then you have, you know, well, that, you know, then you kind of have acceptance where you say, well, you know, that might be how it is, but it would be different for me, or I or whatever. And then finally you either quit. At my point, you stay in your role and you never change, and you just sit in your dojo as it dwindles in size and relevancy, or you just quit training, or you say, I'm going to adapt. And so what I did as time went on, within a couple of years of the first UFC, really around 97 or so, I started going to a jiu-jitsu school one night a week when I was still doing Kempo. A friend of mine.
Okay, I mean, that's still way ahead of the game. 97 doing jiu-jitsu. That's way, I mean, because you talk about those UFCs, you're talking, I mean, UFC 1, I mean, we're like no, like groin strike. They were still doing groin strike. I mean, that was not mainstream yet. I mean,
you're right.
It doesn't get mainstream until 2006, really, when it became legalized in California.
No, absolutely right.
Even my fights when I was training with you, it really wasn't mainstream yet. Nobody in Sac State knew what I was training for, or when I tell my teacher, no, I'm going to Mexico to do an MMA fight. Nobody knew what that was. So 97 jiu-jitsu, actually, that's
it was, I would go down to, I'll tell you the history of that school real fast because it's kind of relevant for the Sacramento scene. But it was, I went down one night a week and it was takedown night because that was just the night that fit in my schedule, you know? And so it was like takedowns and stuff. And, you know, it was a jiu-jitsu school. So the takedowns really they weren't that great, but they were better than nothing. And it got me in the gi doing grappling because we would do rounds and I would get submitted, you know, triangled, like I'll make it up like 7 times in 5 minutes, maybe more, you know, that goes when it's new. You have it as you're starting out. And but the dudes were tough. And the other thing I learned there was you live in this world of traditional martial arts and they go, we're the best school in town and a black belt here can beat anybody in town. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you roll into some jiu-jitsu school in South Sac and there's like dudes that just can like just break you in half, right? You know, and it had been if I rolled into the Sac City wrestling room, they'd taken me down and smashed me too. But you just in this isolated world. So when you branch out of it, you experience, you know, all that. And actually, that school was Cassio Wernick had come to Sacramento.
Back then.
Couldn't get a work visa. So he went back to Brazil and he left a couple purple belts in charge of his gym. So I never met Cassio in my life, but this was Cassio's gym. And it was like this guy Carlos Garcia who fought around town. He was a decent sized guy, and some other guys. A lot of them are still with Cassio now. But so you just go down. There's kind of a meat grinder gym, you know. I mean, it's, you know, because there was no adult supervision, right? Think about a gym being run by a purple belt. I mean, you can imagine it was a little. The guys were cool, but it was a rough.
I bet. I mean, Cassio Wernick purple belts aren't any joke, especially in '97. I mean, I don't see anybody being able to. I mean,
that's true. That's true. But I also meant like you don't have that senior guy who runs a gym. You kind of had a tough guy in no management room. That's all I'm saying. But so down there, and then as time went on, I mean, I got more exposed to it, and then I got a random offer, and this ties back into your hometown. I got an offer to do an MMA fight up in Oroville at Gold Country Casino with IFC in like 2000. It was in 2000. So I still doing Kempo, doing 1 night a week, jiu-jitsu. And so I fought, like you said, no commission, no blood tests. I think the scale was just kind of a moderately important thing. You know what I mean, right? Yeah. But and so I fought there, I won. So that was great. I got my show money and my win money. It was kind of a star-studded card because it was Robbie Lawler's like third fight. Okay. Frank Mir was on the card.
Yeah. Okay.
Paul Buentello was on the card. Yeah. Like all dudes that later were like famous dudes. You know what I mean? And so it was like you said, the scene was so small then, and Frank Shamrock was like one of the judges. Bobby Southwell, all these guys that were like first UFC guys were all there because, like you said, it was anyways. So I did that, which was awesome. That really woke me up to things because, I realized. I say realize. So that, I mean, look, I was already on the path, and you're like, this is the thing. I mean, I love fighting. Fighting's great, but you realize this is like true fighting and the closest we can get. You know what I mean? Because that was the most like in the ring, MMA. I'm sorry, in the cage was the most like the bar fights I'd been in as a bouncer. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, the bar fights, there was some terrain stuff, and sometimes other people would jump in, but that idea of here we are, it's on, and the purity of the moment and everything you've done has led to this moment skill wise, and let's see what happens, right? That was like kind of like one of my moments where like going, this is the path. And then I just stopped doing Kempo. I mean, I was a 4th degree black belt, like it mattered, I mean, because they try to program you that, you mean so much, and it didn't matter, because like my 4th degree black belt meant nothing when I got in the cage, right? It meant nothing. I mean, I won, but I won.
I think it means something, right? I mean, amazing. Right. I mean, not you didn't do the techniques, but there's something that's actually deep. I still feel like I look at it because, for example, like I think of my wrestling act. I think of when going into the wrestling room as a freshman. I had something the other wrestlers didn't have.
Sure.
And I think I give a lot of it to karate. I don't even know. Sure. I can't put a finger on it, but it is something. But anyway, it's definitely not.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Like to go with that. At the dojos, one thing that is good and bad about karate is they kind of do the size doesn't matter. So you get thrown in doing like pretty much full contact sparring, and I was spotting guys 60, 70, 80 pounds. Yeah. Dudes you don't even know. Dudes come in the gym and want to fight, and that's pretty scary, if you don't know and you know the dude. Yeah. And so, as my friend Tony, the guy I mentioned earlier, who got me into jiu-jitsu, when I was warming up, he just said to me, he goes, "Remember, this is just a hard sparring session, dude." Because Tony was a good-sized guy, and he and I had fought a bunch of times, and then he just said, and he's right. That was good advice. He said, "This is no harder than what you've done in the gym. It's just at this casino," right? Which is kind of that's a real thing too. Wrestling practice when you were a freshman, I'm sure was scary, but you'd also been punched and beat up a bunch of times at the gym right before that, the dojo before that, right? So it was just a little bit of a step. It wasn't like a major step,
Yeah. But
So I'll give you all that, but I'll say what I used in that ring was boxing punches and the jiu-jitsu I had learned and the little bit of wrestling I'd learned. Sure, you know what I mean? I did not do Kona grab or 5 swords or any of those techniques. So with that story, then and we'll get to Kit here in a second. This is getting real close to when I met you, because I met you only a year or two after that, I think. And so what happened is Kit had been going to the jiu-jitsu school I mentioned, Casio school, just not on takedown nights. Okay. And so Carlos, when I quit doing Kempo, and to represent the Kit, when Kit talked about his instructor getting mad that he was learning from the wrong guy, that kind of thing. That happens. These martial arts guys feel like they own you in some way. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And so I went and did my own thing, as I remember when I quit doing, the guy said, well, no one in this town can teach you but me. No one knows enough but me. And I go, well, we'll see, because I'm thinking, I don't know, some of those dudes down at that gym have taught me a lot of stuff, and they're not even black belts, So I started working out. So Carlos, the same guy I mentioned, he kind of started teaching at this place in Roseville. There was a keto school, like doing jiu-jitsu like 2 nights a week. And so I said, hey, dude, can I work out there? And he's like, yeah, man. And so what it is, I would go do jiu-jitsu there. And then after jiu-jitsu, I would have a striking class.
Okay.
And so Carl said, hey, this guy Kit, he's got like, this is my memory, and it's probably not wrong. He's a Kyokushin guy from Japan. He's got like 100 Kyokushin fights, which is probably true because Kit was doing like tournaments there, right?
Yeah, so, I remember seeing old stuff on like MySpace. I remember MySpace. Some of them might be on YouTube too, but I remember watching his fights when I first met him. I was like, wow, this stuff's cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew what Kyokushin was, but like, what I mean? It's like amateur boxing. Amateur boxers have 100 fights. They do 100 fights by the time they're 22. So Kit started coming down, and we started working out together. And the way that kind of went, and I wish Kit was here so he could tell me if his memory is the same, is Kit really showed me how to kick, like, because the Kyokushin kicks are like Muay Thai kicks, and it was a different way of kicking than I learned. And then I showed him like American boxing, like the way to punch American Western, we'll say Western boxing, because Europeans box too, And so we had a lot of great back and forth, like striking matches, because it was like, me as the American martial artist boxing influence and Kit doing Kyokushin, right? So we had a lot of really, really awesome matches, and that's where I met Dan and Mark, was that school. So Dan and Mark were all working together.
That's it. That was in Roseville. The Aikido school, but they had
and then Mark had a black belt in judo and had wrestled in high school.
Okay.
So he was like the opposite of me. So then Mark was like showing us judo and wrestling takedowns. And Mark, I think, got a purple belt from Hickson. So like Mark used to do the Gracie cruises back when there was no jiu-jitsu school. So he would go on those cruises and spend a week with like hoists, on a cruise. And they do like 2 workouts a day. So Mark, for having not lived in a town where there was like really high-end jiu-jitsu, is a really good grappler. So Mark would like show me, here's how you do a wrestling takedown, here's a judo throw, here's how you do arm bars and triangles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was like a really good thing. And then Kit was like, hey man, there's this, come down to Sac State, there's this guy down there, Chris, he's pretty good. And then you come down to the club. So that's when I met you at Sac State.
Okay.
Was a couple of those nights I would go down with Kit and work out in the wrestling room, which final callback, they had a boxing class at Sac State when I was there that was just a club, and they would do a smoker every year. And I actually boxed in that room that was the wrestling room. That's where we used to box.
Yeah, that room was nice because I think at one point there was a wrestling at Sac State. Might have had a wrestling team or something. Because there's another night of the week that they had the Sac Judo Club, and those guys were really good. And I get to roll. And that was like all my training. I mean, my training was when you guys came. I remember, when you guys were, most of the time I remember you coming was right when it was close to me getting a fight. And I mean, that was it. That was my camp. That was like, it meant everything to me. I really I needed that. And then I remember the judo guys coming in. At first I was like, judo, and those guys are really good. And they knew jiu-jitsu too. Like, I mean, they knew, obviously jiu-jitsu comes from judo and the techniques, but I mean, they'd hang around on the ground, it's not, it wasn't just throws and stuff. They'd stand. And that's the general, when it comes down to, when you get a bunch of guys in a room, especially when they have knowledge. I mean, even if they don't have knowledge, if they get drunk, they'll end up doing submission wrestling. I mean, it's kind of in our nature. But when you actually get skilled people, then you can have a really good workout.
And to that, and you're right, like to touch on that, in my career, when I look back at it, the first time I actually had, I would say, skilled training partners and coaches was around when we were talking. The Kempo guys, they act like they know a lot, but they're not good at the science part of it. Like this is where you go, this is what you do. Let me show you specific things. They make you memorize things. Yeah. Sometimes aren't even right, but they don't know that. And you just do whatever. But, at that time, like Mark and Kit and stuff, and Dan, we were all learning. I brought my pieces, Mark brought his. That was the beginnings of, Reggie, all the guys I trained with. Because like in the Kempo, my time in martial arts, I was always the guy trying to figure it out. I watched a lot of the boxing. I tried to figure out like where your feet should be for power and for movement and defense and all that stuff, without doing all the catchphrases that no one understands that don't mean anything. So I was always trying to bring that in from boxing, because to me that was like the thing. But the grappling world was foreign to me, right? And in a lot of early on, I would say, like my early grappling, it was just guys being kind of meatheads, which I'm not ripping on. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
But Mark was a very technical, even though he was big and strong, he was a technical, skilled guy. So he'd be like, this is how you defend the armbar, or this is, and it's because he learned from Hickson, and he learned from, Hoyce, right, and Horian on those cruises. So, the Gracies for all, sometimes the Gracies I feel a little overblown, but they were technical. You know what I mean? They did have skill. It wasn't just, I'm bigger and stronger and faster, and I'm going to, like Mark Coleman, right, amazing fighter, but like, he's also super big and strong. He's not the best wrestler in the world. He's just super big and strong, And so Mark brought a lot of that. And then Dan's a smart guy and a good athlete. And Dan got good real fast. And Dan started training other places and brought a lot in. And then Kit, like I mentioned, Kit and I had a lot of interplays that were super fun. And I felt like Kit and I, in some ways, were the same, but mirror. Like I said, he was really good at kicks. I was pretty good at punching. And it was like this mirror. So we had a lot of fun with how to make that work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was the first time I was really around guys I thought that were super technical, which helped me a lot. And like I joked with you before, at that point, for various reasons, skill and physical attributes, I don't think I ever won a round against you. I know I gave you a little bit of trouble a couple times, but I don't think I ever beat you in a round. I never took a round from you, Chris. You always handled me pretty good. So you're
always coming when I'm at the peak of my training camp. Yeah, you get coming. My stamina, the stamina. I think maybe just that's all. I love it because I when I train. Yeah, one of my biggest lines is fatigue will make a bitch out of anyone. And
that's true.
Once you're tired of nothing, it doesn't matter. That's the break. I mean, none. So if you can outlast somebody endurance wise, then that's
another one that was fun to touch on. This is around that time, a little bit after I quit seeing you regularly. My Dan met this guy. I'll give a shout out. His name's Dave Wells. He was a Pac-10 wrestling champ from Cal Poly. So he's
okay.
I think, and he was an All-American. I forget what he placed, but he was like, I think in the NCAA finals, he was top 5 is my memory. So, and he was kind of a funk style wrestler, not a power wrestler. Most guys in your town are power wrestlers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. Because that's just, I'm strong, I'm good. But Wells, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's the D1 wrestler, so he's a strong dude. You know what I mean?
Obviously,
but
not that.
He is so fast and so agile, and that was a whole nother world of wrestling. Like those guys that that like they don't do a blast double on you, they shoot a double and then transition to a single and slide by and trip you, and you're like, how'd you do that? And he was bigger than me, but he was faster and more flexible. So that was interesting too, going with a guy who was 180 pounds. I think he wrestled at 155 or something like that, which is a big guy, right? Because that's a cut weight. And he was way faster than I was, on just speed, which was, and that opened my eyes up too, to like what wrestling can be, not just smash.
Yeah, I'd say the scrambling. The phrase scrambling, where you just scramble, like never stop moving. And we get that mentality because our rounds are short, really, like 2-minute rounds, and you don't have any time to stop, and you got to just constantly be moving, and that scrambling definitely helped in just getting out of. To extreme, we call it a fish. If you're just only scramble, technique, then you're a fish. Yeah. But even a fish is better than a dead dog. You know what I mean?
True.
But scrambling, but technical scrambling. I mean, you're always grabbing something, looking for something, and you'll grab it and figure out what to do with it as you're grabbing it. And
and that was what Wells was like. It was so good going with him. And so that kind of gives my training history until I was like 42. And then I moved out of Sacramento and lived in New Jersey for a little while with a job and didn't have a gym out there. I went to one jiu-jitsu gym, but I didn't care for it. It was all gi, you know, and I'm just not. I just personally find the gi restrictive. You know, I know some people say it makes you better. I don't really think it makes you better. I disagree with that, but you know, it's just restrictive. And and then I moved to Washington. This ties in. So I go to Washington, and there's this really good gym. I'll give him a shout out. This guy named Mike Chupa. He had a career, I say, similar to yours. If you can look him up on SureDog.
Yeah, Mike Chupa. I know Mike Chupa. Yeah.
He had 25, 30 fights, fought King of the Cage. He maybe became across him
yeah.
And he fought, and he lived in El Paso, so he fought in Mexico too. So you might have done the same cards as him.
I think he's been on the same card or something, because I know the name. I'll look him up and
he's like our size. He's our size too.
Yeah.
So I randomly walk into his gym, not knowing him, and I work out, and they're like, oh, you know, and he's a great guy. So I started working out there. So I'm like this time I'm like 40. God, now I'm like 46 now. I'm still doing heavy rounds. You know what I mean, right? With a bunch of tough guys. They're good guys, but tough guys. But Mike is probably, and this is the last part of, not last part, but like Mike is one of the best submission grapplers I've ever met. You know, so he's like super technical on submission grappling, to where it's like really good teacher. And so the point is always like, just wish I would have met like Mike and Dave on the wrestling side back when like you and I were working out, because they were so good. You know what I mean? And we could have like brought, you know what I'm getting. And now I'm sure if I went back in time, maybe Mike wasn't as good as he was when I met him, but you know what I'm saying? So good. It was just, I'm like, so the point was, by the time I got to my mid to late 40s, I'm like going, this is what fighting is about. MMA, right? At this point, you can get highly skilled grappling, highly skilled striking, all mixed together. And now it's to the level that professional boxing was, with good trainers, with good skills, that you can be a really good fighter. You know what I mean? If you just go do it, versus like we were doing, I work out with this guy, work out with that guy, try to put it together. How good am I at putting together, right? While we're trying to fight, you know what I mean? You're in the mix, so hard, you know?
I mean, I look at it different ways. Like I look at it, and that, you know, it helped me. I mean, but to be a part of that is so, you know, that it's worth it. Like, there's no, like, it's easier for the guys now, but you know, who wants an easy, I mean, what we went through to get all these and put these pieces together, it developed us in a way that, I don't know. And in some ways, having it all in one place, there's something you're losing too, right? I mean,
I see your point. Yeah,
you know,
it was much more of a find your way, right? When we were doing it, you'd find, you know, you and I would match up, and it was like, who effing knows what this dude's bringing, right? Who effing knows? You may try some crazy ass Taekwondo spin kick on me. Right? Who effing knows? You know, right?
And now you expect them to know everything. If
but you're
a high level fighter, he knows everything. I don't see anybody really that's not pretty good at like that. Guy's got everything. I mean, if you're at the top, you've got everything. You and it's and then on top of that is also the athleticism. Now I feel, unfortunately, I don't feel I would be successful. I never felt as I was never a power wrestler. I never had like just this brute strength. I had stamina, I had technique, I had flexibility. I don't consider myself like that a top athlete though, you know what I mean? So like nowadays, the top fighters are all those, and also that just an athlete, you know, they're just built. And that was at the time we were in, you didn't have to be, you know, in fact, a lot of the athletes weren't the ones doing it. I felt like there was more technique in a lot of ways, but not everybody had all the technique. So it was a weird time, for sure to be in. I mean, I watch it now. It's funny now. I've actually, when I came to Thailand, I was still kind of that was 11 years ago. You know, I was 31 or something, but I kind of was able to recognize that, you know, okay, I'm ready to retire from trying to be the best in the world or something. And I did some Muay Thai fights just because I'm in Thailand. I wanted to do it. That's a whole nother game. I mean, those shins, like I used to, I probably mentioned it maybe in Kia Stalker. I've mentioned it before. I mean, you know, I'm used to somebody kicking me and being able to check it with my elbow. That works even with in MMA fights. I've done that with people who ended up making it to the you know, the UFC championship fights. Three of the fighters I fought made it to the championships of the fight, and like Ian McCall, he made it. I remember checking him in a kick. He didn't kick me again. So it's like,
yeah.
But here I go with just, you know, local Muay Thai fighters, and I do that, and my elbows start swelling, and they're still kicking me and picking me apart, picking apart I'm, you know, they're kicking my head. I'm blocking. Eventually, they kick my chest, my ribs. So then I have to bring my late arm down, and my ribs hurt so much. I'm not gonna even worry about checking my head because I don't want to risk him switching it up and kicking my ribs again because those are gone. I'm switching my stance. So it's like the Muay Thai game is a whole different game, and I'm 30-1, and I'm like, I'm not going to try to take it. So I kind of actually leave. I was teaching at the university here, and I did some, and there's a couple guys that were fighting that were students, and I'd train and roll and stuff. But basically for the last like 7-8 years, I really haven't been, done anything, but I do my, now I've transitioned to, I do my yoga in the morning, yoga, Wim Hof breaths, stretches, and then farming. So that's kind of my, I've become a farmer. And it's funny, if you've heard that old adage that's like, you know, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I feel like I'm living that. In my head, I'm still in shape enough that I feel, and I feel there's muscle memory that I could probably do it, but I haven't done shit in 7 or 8 years as far as actual with another person. So I'm just but I am using my tools. It's almost like that. I don't know. I know they taught us that in Chinese Kimbo and the kosher rule, like they just come sometimes tell us that when we learn the weapons, the farmers would learn it, the bokin and stuff were come from that. So but it's funny that here I am almost going back in time. I'm thinking that sometimes when I'm digging holes and stuff that, you know, I move this around.
A lot of old school boxers, they would like chop wood and do that kind of work because it's like, you know, it's core strength, it's manipulating something, and it doesn't mess up like if you throw punches. It kind of, it's the same movement.
It fills the niche. I don't miss it like a lot of people ask, like how, because people nobody just like, how could you just not be involved anymore? So my question for you, what now are you, what are you doing?
Well, sure. And I'll finish up the Washington story. So when I was in Washington, I also then I started cornering guys because I was old. So the thing about Washington, this is something too to appreciate, and then I'll get to what I'm doing mostly with my life now, because I'm in Arizona now, so I'm not in Washington anymore. But the local fight scene in Washington is so good. They have amateur kickboxing MMA cards every 2 months that have like 15, 20 fights on it. So if you know, so it's such a feeder to be able to, and then they have pro cards too, multiple times a year, all in the Seattle area. So like young fighters, they're like, oh, you want to do a fight? Sure, we'll get you on an amateur card. And it's not a smoker. It's like,
it's legit amateur.
They still have the doctors there, you know, right? It's like a legit amateur card. And then you win 5 or 6 of those, then you move on to a pro card. And it's all like, so like, I'm just saying, and having been to a bunch of those, I would say this, you would still be able to be a pro champion in one of those up there. I'm just telling you, having worked out with those dudes where you felt you were at, you know, where you think you couldn't compete now. Well, okay, maybe not UFC, I don't know, but you're as good as, you back then were as good as any of the guys that are, you know, winning the low-level pro cards up there.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because sometimes I get, when I watch something, I think like, wow, these guys, it's changed. I mean, it's just athleticism too, and on top of everything that I see, I'm like, wow, these guys are better athletes than we were back then.
No, I know, and I think on pure athleticism, on attributes, they might not be that much better at the level I'm talking about than you were. They just have the technique they have is just more modernized and tighter, right? Just because you know, we were all raw technical wise, right? But
that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. That's right.
If I need it.
Yeah, but like I said, and then the way I hear about Muay Thai in Thailand, where if you want fights, you can get them, right? But, you know, that's how it is in Washington, dude. You want MMA fights? They have them. It's like, you know, it's like super interesting. Whereas in SAC, it was so hard. You know, it was only those the unsanctioned fights at the Indian casinos, right? And then after that, it was like remember the level was like that, and then it's like King of the Cage UFC. There was like this huge step, right? You're doing Gladiator Challenge, fighting guys that didn't know that much, and then immediately you're at this level that's like insane. There was no way to get 7 or 8 amateur fights and then get 7 or 8 pro fights, right? It was just a great, like you. I mean, when you fought on Showtime, what was that like? How many fights did you have, dude? Your Showtime
Yeah,
fight, like your
no,
seventh
I
fight
was close to 10 or something at that time. That was yeah, because that one was after, and I was training with Dave Terrell at that time, which had it, and then I also had that year in Japan, which that was the big game changer for me, was when I studied abroad. Now, see, I'm trying to. I feel like I met you before I went to Japan, maybe, and then because I was at Sac State, and then I went to Japan for a year, and then I came back. So that year in Japan was big because that was 2005. That was Pride. That was when it was all Pride.
Sure.
Pride and Shuto and stuff. And then so I came back and I had like this edge on everybody that
yeah, I remember you fought at you fought at Memorial Auditorium. Kit and I came to watch a fight there.
Yeah.
And then I think your Showtime fight wasn't too far after that, right?
Yeah, actually the Showtime was before that. I think Scott Jorgensen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was Scott Jorgensen. Yeah, he ended up fighting for the UFC belt.
Yeah,
I lost that fight, but yeah, that went to a decision. And yeah, so I think that was that fight. Yeah, that was that was a feeder to the WEC. That we still didn't have UFC for lighter weights, lightweight. Yeah, 155.
Yeah, right, you're right. They didn't have it. You're right. WEC
145. And that fight actually, that fight was to get into WEC. If I didn't realize it at the time, I don't know if that was official, but basically Scott Jorgensen, he beat me, boom, then he went into the WEC, and then UFC pretty much shortly after consumed it, and then he got to get into the UFC and then ended up fighting for the belt. So it's like, I look at that fight, it's so close. I actually beat him the second round. He beat me the first and the third round. And that was like a window of an opportunity, I guess, missed to get in. But I mean,
But what I mean is it was hard. Those 10 fights, I'm saying in Washington, in the Washington world now, dude, you could have had 7 or 8 amateur fights. Think about how seasoned you would have been.
Yeah.
That's true. You had to like climb fast back then.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Bigger guys were in the UFC with like 4 or 5 fights sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
And so anyways, so then I cornered a bunch, which was good, because it was, you get older, it's hard to compete at a level, even in the gym, your late 40s, and it's just tough. I still worked out, but it was just tough doing rounds with dudes, you know what I mean? That were big and young.
Oh, yeah.
So then it was fun cornering because I could kind of try to, help with the things that gave me trouble. There was game plans, breaking down film on the guys and getting a game plan and then setting up drills to drill that and working specifics. And then in between rounds, I remember when I fought, whether it was, the boxing or other things, sometimes the cornermen, they don't know what to tell you. They don't give you simple, specific advice. Go get him, Chris. Don't let him hit you. Thanks, dude. That helps, You need guys to say, double that jab up and put him in his chest to move him back. Then shoot your takedown. You need that. Oh, okay. Because, you're in that fight. It's hard to grasp it. But when you're outside a little bit. And so I felt that was fun, because I was like, boy, I wish I had that kind of cornering when I was younger. Because guys just kind of were your buddies and go have at it. You know what I mean? And those, don't get me wrong, it's all the fighter, but little things from your corner can help because
especially when you know that, you need a corner that is training with you a lot, so they know you. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's that little adjustment. You're in the fight. It's hard to see things. If I say, dude, seriously, don't take him down over there. That's near his corner, and he's listening to his corner. Take him down the other side of the ring. Oh, that makes sense. Like it's easy to lose those things. Because then you know what I mean? Because people yell at fight. You know what I mean? All these little things. Those are little things that like you just need to hear because you're in the moment. You're in the moment when you're fighting. So anyway, so that's that deal there, and then I still go back sometimes and help them with fights if it works out, because they're a great gym and they're great guys. Mike and his wife and all the guys that are there. Cassie's his wife. I'll give her a shout too. She's super cool, and they have a bunch of fighters coming out of the gym. It's super awesome. So now I'm an engineer. I don't know if you knew that back when I met you.
Okay.
And I'm like a R&D, research development engineer. So I do a lot of, engineering experiments and science and develop new systems and stuff. So that kind of also ties in with what we talked about earlier is
mechanics of.
Well, when you do the mechanics of striking, that's like engineering, how to turn your body, how to turn and all those things and where to be. And the other part is if you do R&D engineering like me, I'm often designing things and testing it and I have data and the data is always talking to us, but we have to listen to it. You have to be able to hear it. And even if you want to hear it, it's hard to hear it. You go back to martial arts, back to what I said earlier. Royce Gracie goes and submits everybody. I don't believe it. I don't want to listen to that. I know what I've been doing for 10 years is the way to do it. I'm going to keep doing it this way. And you see that in engineering. Guys are like, we're doing it this way. We always do it this way. Okay. Well, here's the real physics of what's going on. Here it doesn't work. No, all I know is this works. This is how you do it. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's a human problem. You know, but fighting, it's immediate. I can say whatever I want. Like, you and I fight and I lose. Whether I get knocked out or submitted, decision, I can always explain that away. But let's say it's early MMA and I'm this great striker and you're an okay striker, but a good MMA guy, and you kind of take me down and choke me out, right? Okay. Yeah. Or you armbar me. I can say whatever I want, but everybody knows what happened. And even if I deny it, in my heart, I know what happened. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And engineering should be like that, but it's easy to hide from sometimes, right? Because we can just keep, you know what I mean? So I always felt that engineering and fighting kind of went together more than maybe people realized, or we could say science goes together more, right? You know? Yeah. Because
when you say R&D engineering, what I mean, engineering can be so many things. I mean, right. Construction of bridges, or
you're right. That's not R&D. Yep. Okay. You're right. There's a lot of engineering that you follow the recipe and it works, right? But the engineering I do is you say, I need to figure out how to do something, and I got to, okay, I'll go figure it out. And I do a bunch of first principles engineering. I design something, we build it, right? You know, and the point is that is much more like fighting, I think, than maybe most people. That part of engineering is very much like fighting, right?
Can you give me an example? Like what kind of job? Like you're just presented with a problem and and you have to build the solution from ground up. It's not you're not fixing the how the
so early in my career I had an example where it was a catalyst bed. You need to make something that can take a monopropellant, which in this case is high concentration hydrogen peroxide, and decompose it into oxygen and hydrogen. And let's design a better catalyst bed that is smaller and works 100%, decomposition in a certain envelope. And so come up with ideas, do some subscale experiments, build one, test it, modify it, had to figure out how long to be, come up with models to predict what we wanted, optimize it. That's one. I've done, I work in rockets, so I've done like combustion devices where you're like, we need to make an injector for a rocket. Okay, what's it got to do? Operate in this conditions, but this is a little different than before. Okay, do some math on, jets, impinging, vaporization, mixing, combustion, heat transfer, sort it out, right? Test it and then modify it. Okay. So I did a lot of hot gas valves for like some like at 4,000 degrees, valves that worked at 4,000 degrees. You get into how to make those things when they get hot to still seal. They have to self-adjust when they get hot. They have to move themselves passively so the seals still work and the parts fit together. So there's a lot of, make the thing embrace variability and be robust. And so how do you do that? You come up with thinking about physics and then having things adapt to the world they operate in, and then build it and test it, and then it works or it doesn't work. And then if it does work, you improve it. And if it doesn't work, you got to fix it. So a lot of those kind of things, you take the data.
Yeah. So one thing when you're saying this, I heard something interesting that because you mentioned something about like testing it, and then how much stuff is there's theoretical knowledge that you apply, but then when like I heard that the jet engine or something was mainly created by mechanics and then kind of explained later through theory to explain how it worked. But a lot of it was just tweaking things that you're actually doing it, and it's not math. You don't have any, you might have the intuitive knowledge from experience that certain things might work. And then is that what you're referring to? Where there are adjustments that you make that aren't based on theory?
Yeah, it's usually kind of a combo. So some people just try to appear in intuition. That usually doesn't work because, there's more than one way to do something, but there's like a million ways for it not to work and only a few that it works. Yeah. So usually the best development engineering comes from, and it's something that Elon Musk is way into, just for reference, even though good engineers have always done this, but Elon is very, very upfront about this, is he says, you do first principles engineering, which is things that we know really well, like Newton's first law, mass times acceleration, Bernoulli's, which is you shoot a liquid through an orifice, the pressure and the velocities. We do a bunch of first principles to get us like the 80% understanding, and then you go test. And then with testing, you can apply more advanced techniques to really understand and explain it, right? And that's why it's very much like fighting. You know, you talked about earlier, you know, I have to, sometimes, like John Danaher makes these, you read his posts on Facebook, they're very interesting on the complications of jiu-jitsu, you know? And I feel sometimes jiu-jitsu falls a little too much like the Kempo guys do. They get super into this, watch me apply this triangle on this guy. And they go through hand here and all this, reach like this, not like that. And I'm like, dude. But then you watch a fight, an MMA fight, and it's like, boom, choke. You know what I mean? And it's like, the reality is we can break it down in these super specific steps and make you a program that makes it unstoppable, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, when you and I apply it on each other, it's the 80%, right? You know where you got to be. You kind of know the first principle of how to apply a triangle choke on me. You know, right? You want my arm across, and you know, right? We know how that works. And there's all those things you're going to do. And I might throw a punch, and then you get the arm across for the triangle. You're not going to do the jiu-jitsu, grab my wrist, reach over, pull this, lay, you know, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So development engineering is much more like fighting jiu-jitsu versus the seminar jiu-jitsu, right? And I think that's the thing. Like when you know, you and I fight anybody, there is a certain amount of, I kind of got a plan. I got some first principles here. I got my 80, but it's going to happen how it happens. I have to adapt in the moment. You and I, if we're going against each other, I have to listen to what you're bringing. You know what I mean? I mean, I have to do my thing, but I'm going to listen to the data, which is, well, he went here and I did this and he did that. And there's this, you know, and you got to be open to the, I have a plan, I have a goal, but I can't be so focused on my goal that I ignore the data in front of me. You know?
So that's almost, that gets, I don't want to get spiritual when we're talking about engineering too much, but in a sense, just presence, right? I mean, you know, like to be present and if you're off thinking about these other like, you know, potential concepts, but this is what you have right here. And that's what, I mean, when I know the most present I ever am, and that's another thing, is when I'm on my land doing my farming, or when I was in a fight, you know what I mean, maybe making love or something. I mean, there's certain times that you're present, and there's something that there's something that's so I mean, I think we all seek that. So do you get that when you're doing engineering, when you get involved, you're just like in it, like you're just and you'd compare that to being in like a jiu-jitsu? Because when you're in a jiu-jitsu match, it is that technical, but or in a sense, but your awareness of it is like hyper focused, and then it's like you're proud. Like I've done things when I've got people in these crazy moves, and then I was so proud of it, and then I try to explain it afterwards. And if I tried to explain it afterwards, it would come out as it's over, it's finished. It was then anybody who was watching it that could recognize it, but it's like
but the key from the first principles, like, you know, I'll just go with an arm bar. You know, with the arm bar, from drilling it, and it's like I said, I feel this gets lost with the way the BJJ guys do it. I think wrestling and boxing are really good at, this is the end result, right? We're going to drive to, when I do a single, this is how the single works mechanically. I get your one leg, I got to get your weight over your supporting heel, and you're going to go down. Now, how I get there, let's talk about 10 different ways to do that. But you know where you got to go. And if I get you there, you're going down, you know, right? But when people get into martial arts and belts, a lot of times, and I don't feel the high-level competitors do this. I don't think Danaher's guys like think like this. You know what I mean? I think they're just going, they've drilled a bunch, they're going for opportunities when they come. I don't think they think 10 chain sequences. And, you know, I mean, there's chain wrestling, there's chain jiu-jitsu. They're not going, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. No, they're just looking for, they're going to run and look for opportunities, right?
In real time,
But when you're not a fighter, or things are scary, you want that certainty. And so you want to learn with here's how you do an arm bar. I grab their hand, I turn the thumb up with these 4 fingers, and I keep my thumb toward my chin. And then I do this with my legs, both legs here, right? And you have this recipe and you feel safe because you feel if you follow this procedure, you will win your fight. So when you get in a fight with the meth head, at the gas station, if you do these things, you'll be okay. Whereas when you've been in real fights, you're kind of like, I'm gonna get in a fight this meth head because that's the situation I'm in. He's a tweaker and he's being, this is what's gonna happen. There's no way out of this. I think I'm gonna win, but I have to see where it goes because there's a lot of chaos coming.
Exactly.
I don't have the certainty of the recipe. And R&D engineering is the same way. You start a design, and this might sound like a fight to you because to me it does. You start it, and this happens a lot. I'm like, I've never done this before. Man, okay. And I start reading things and trying to figure it out. And I think about the physics, and I look, and I'm like, there's this moment where I'm going, I think this is the one that's going to get me. I'm not going to be able to solve this one. There's this moment, right? Which in a lot of fights that happens. Let's you just smash the guy. You're like, man, it's a little rough right now. This guy's pretty tough, right? I think like, is this the guy that's going to like finish me? I don't know, maybe, right? And that's kind of how it goes. And then it starts to come together, and it kind of coalesces. And then there's that, and so then there's like really two moments when you're super present. There's the finishing the design when you kind of, it comes together and you're really running. You're like, hey, my uncertainty's gone. I've kind of coalesced with this kind of design point. And you're just doing you're doing the finals, and it just kind of, you can run real fast. You're making tons of progress after having this period when you're just kind of spinning, getting nowhere, even though you probably are making progress, doesn't feel like it. And then there's when you test it. That is very much like when you, like, because remember, I'm doing the hardware too that can blow up. It's not just like, it's like these are rockets and combustion devices. So when they go wrong, they blow up a lot of times. And that's very much like when you shut the door behind you, or you go to some gym for the first time and you don't know any of these dudes. And you're like, man, this might be a rough night, right? We're gonna start sparring, and these guys are gonna be beasts. They're gonna mess me up bad. When you hook that thing up and you hit fire switch, it's like that's the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to look at it. I'm like, I don't even want to look. I'll just look, because it's such a thing. But you're in that moment. It feels very similar to right before you go down the tunnel, right into the cage. Very similar.
That's interesting too. I mean, so do you think you have an advantage in engineering to because of that? I mean, would it go both ways, that engineering helps your fighting helps your engineering? I mean,
I think the fighting and the, like we talked, you can all have big egos in fighting, maybe if you beat everybody, or maybe you have big egos with people that don't fight. But, fighters around each other tend to be pretty cool because we've all kind of beat on each other a decent amount. But my point is the humility of, am I the toughest guy in the room? I don't know, so a lot of times I haven't, you mean like the humility of losing, like we've talked, you lose whatever. You lose a lot in the gym, even if you're winning in real fights, right? Because that's the point to train in, whether you're training guys with guys better than you or you're training guys bigger than you. And anyways, I think for me, the having to give up traditional martial arts and embrace true fighting of MMA and give up the importance of a 4th degree black belt and thinking I was, people saying you're great all the time and going, no, the reality is I'm not great. I'm just okay. And I have to embrace reality here. I think that helped me in engineering because I work with a lot of engineers in my career who are dogmatic, like Kempo guys or Taekwondo guys or religious fanatics. This is how you design this thing. And I'm like, let me show you 4 other ways that have flown and worked in space. And here's the physics. No, everybody knows. I'm like, not everybody knows. You know what I mean? And that's the same arguments you would have if in 1995 arguing with a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo about what works in a fight. You know what I mean? And you say, dude, I could take you down and arm triangle you. And he'd be like, I'll kick you in the head before you can even come in. And you're like, I don't think you can. You're right. And everybody knows Taekwondo kicks can take anybody out. I can kick you before you can touch me. I'll keep you at range. You're like, you're not going to keep me at range, dude. I mean, I'm telling you things you know, but those were arguments guys would have and believe it, And engineering happens all the time too, I think. So I think it helps, because there's only so sure of myself I can be, right? Reality bats last, as the old saying goes. You know what I mean? And in martial arts, reality batted last. That's MMA showed up and made it clear. And in R&D engineering, physics does show up, and we have to accept what it tells us.
So most of the work you do is not collaborative. I mean, you have, or is it, or can you?
Kind of. It depends. I do a decent. It depends. I do stuff on my own. my thing usually works in a larger system. So I have things I interface with that I have to collaborate with. There's a give and take on requirements. You know, like let's say it's pressure and mass flow. You know, I need a certain amount. The system can give me so much. We try to optimize that. So, so there's times when I'm the customer, and there's times when I'm not the customer, right? And it kind of depends. You know, and then the big chunk of my job is, because I'm older now, is I do also teach a lot of younger engineers how to do things. It's just things, you know, so you walk through how to do stuff. So that's collaborative too. But yeah, I don't just sit in a lab by myself and work on my own. I have a lot of interactions with the ugliness of life, the compromises of a system, right? I have my thing, and I do a lot of compromises to make it work. So that's kind of like fighting too, right? I want to have the perfect technique, but the reality is I have a non-compliant opponent, right?
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, because because it goes. I mean, that makes it difficult in a way. Like, in some ways, it's easier to do something on your own. I mean, to be able to connect somebody else. Okay, we have to. It's almost like two people fighting one opponent or something. But even though you have an advantage, it's you have to not do something that is going to be counterproductive to the other person. So it's a lot of give and take. I would say, I guess, to maybe restate your question, this is what I think you were asking. My job is not where I work 100% on my own without any influence or concessions to other people or things. Because that also makes you different. That makes you very, very closed, and probably stops your growth too. Just people asking me questions or requesting changes makes me really go, well, what do I really need? What's my design really need? What physics is really going on? And those kind of questions force. That's the reality, the give and take, kind of like the non-compliant opponent. The problem with Kempo, right, to talk on that one, is you throw the punch and you hold it there, right? And I do my stuff, right? Well, every time I did rounds with guys, it never worked that way. You throw a punch and you keep moving, right? And you're not compliant. And every fight I got in the bar was the same way. So, you know, real engineering is in the world. And there's a lot of, you try to work with physics, but there's a lot of competing things going on, and a lot of concessions we have to make to try to get to an answer, you know, that works. Yeah.
That's why it's fun.
So yeah, you like the parry check? I like I mean, that one is it works though. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it was drilled into me. I mean, but it changes. It actually goes into wrestling too. Like, it's more mine usually comes over kind of the top, and then it turns into like it's actually a way I get a clinch sometimes. But so
in a general rule, I think it's a bad thing if something comes from boxing to put that hand across. That's generally bad. So the way it would go, I think, in May, is you went like this and you would lean a little bit, right? Then you get your entry. And also, I remember I think you used to like to fight open stance a lot too. You used to fight right with your southpaw. So that also makes that difference. So when you fight southpaw,
I'm
in traditional boxing, southpaw, this hand is a little different, and that also is part of the play there. But I mean, there are times because I've been saying the traditional Kempo thing, this move is a little bad because a good striker will clock you after you do that, right? Yeah. So normally in boxing, you do a pick and a paw, and the paw just means bring it straight down so your hand can come back up, and the pick is the rear hand. But actually, I said that backwards. Pick is front hand, paw is the rear hand. But generally, you wouldn't want to cross over your shoulder. Generally, but if your head's off the center, now you're doing a stance change, and that's what I loved about MMA, by the way, and wrestling mixed in there, is boxing. If you're doing just striking, there's the right way to act is pretty limited. You know, if we're close stance or open stance, it's a certain way. But the minute you throw a takedown in there, there's so many more stance changes. You transition to open and close stance during the exchange. You know, people went off on that neo footwork for a while, you know, that was like, you know, Dillashaw did, you know, you know, which I'm not ripping on Dillashaw. He was a great fighter, but like that stuff was just doing. I'm not trying to minimize it, but they're doing open and what happens is in a pure boxing science standpoint, open or closed stance, which means two right-handers or in a right-hander and a left-hander, that's open and closed, right? Closed and open, right? There's certain things you want to do from a boxing standpoint, a striking standpoint, that maximize your potential to do damage and also maximize your defense. When you do open stance, those are different. So the amazing thing that makes MMA striking so much more fun, and the wrestling, this happens in wrestling all the time, is you maybe enter like 2 right-handers, and then, I shoot my double. You go and kind of sprawl. It turns into a single. Well, the single is an open stance takedown.
Yeah.
And then the striking can come out of that. So there's a lot more open and closed stance striking. So if you can get the guy confused and get ahead of him a little bit, he'll be in the wrong place and do the wrong thing. And that's why MMA striking is so fun. And the wrestlers have stance changes, but boxing almost never does it, right?
Well, and because of wrestlers, that's what's interesting is a right-handed. That's why I fought southpaw. I'm a right-hander.
Right?
Is because in wrestling, a right-hander does have their right knee forward. So that's what's really, it was really interesting. And then that was really valuable when I was doing Muay Thai over here, because I had to change my stance because every part of my body's all right. And luckily it was 3rd round, and I got a couple more rounds I can fight on this side. And that was one fight. That was the one fight that I lost. I won 2, and then this fight I lost by decision. But I admit that if it would have won another round, I don't know what I would have done. I would have had to, I don't know what I would have done. That's what I mean. I always wonder, the one thing I always feared in an MMA fight was that I'd get a calf cramp, because but you only get a calf cramp when you're out of shape, dehydrated. Usually I don't think it would ever happen, but I've had a calf cramp kind of usually when I just get back into training. I try to roll too hard. I didn't stretch. And what would you like? You're paralyzed. I mean, you can't come. You're done.
For a while there, I remember guys were throwing calf kicks for that reason, and they were finishing dudes with calf kicks. If you remember?
Yeah.
I mean, because like you're right. Like you get one of those, you can't move. You're done. I mean, yeah.
So that would be but no, good talk. There's more to as far as now. Are you doing any?
No, I work out.
How do you feel the niche? Yeah, you do something right to feel that.
Yeah,
niche.
I do that, and then I'm in my 50s now, like mid 50s, and so I got some injuries that have kind of shown up that make it hard to do. I would say those last 3-4 years of doing hard rounds has probably cost me a little bit in this regard. So now I just try to work out, keep my mobility up, and I think about fighting a lot, and it's hard. It was hard, my life was always this balance, trying to balance my career versus fighting. I never committed to fighting 100%. I probably wasn't the athlete to have made a living at it. Even now, I mean, what's a guy make our size, UFC champ? They're making what, like 50 grand a fight or something? You get maybe, and you only can do it for, and that's the best in the world, but there's always this thing. I always loved the fight. And it was kind of between my non-work life, it was like the thing that I did. So it was tough to not be able to do it anymore. You know what I mean? It just was, and it was hard, I mean, so I just try to, when a guy is up and if some guys need help, I'll scope out their fight plan for them and stuff. And I think about it a lot. And I mean, so I probably focus more on my career now, because that's a problem solving thing that I can do. And I try to be a better engineer, because it's kind of like you and your farming, right? I'm solving problems still. I'm trying to figure things out. It's kind of like a fight, and then I got to work with physics and manipulate physics to get the outcome I want. So, but yeah, I couldn't establish myself at a gym in town if I went down. I get hurt all the time.
It's not worth it. Yeah, I'm so thankful I didn't get any serious injury. I'm glad I never got surgery, even though I was recommended. There was one time in Japan, actually, one of my fights, they like tore I don't know what it was. They were trying to tell me to get surgery. I was like, no, I'm just.
Where was it? Your knee or what?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it's the Achilles or ACL, something serious that usually you need a surgery. But then I went online or something. I looked. To me, I was like, it looks like it can heal by itself. I don't want a surgery, and luckily, I'm fine. There's no thing. I don't know. It could come up later in my. But it's it's been almost 2 decades, and so I feel I'm pretty. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied. Like, I don't think I ever need to go back into a gym. I want to stay in shape. I want to stay flexible. I want to, and if I needed to defend my family, I want to make sure I can do that, of course. But yeah, I almost feel like it would be not a good idea to try to do anything, because especially I know how, I know how younger guys are. I know how I don't
Yeah.
I don't realize like somebody's older and I need to go insecure on them or anything. So you go in a gym that nobody's gonna be like, oh, I'll go easy. They don't understand that. I didn't understand that at that age. I remember, of course, my wrestling coaches weren't, they're probably younger than I am now, maybe, or stuff, but still, I just, some of them were my age. I'd go, and they were good, obviously, but I didn't really recognize them as, oh, maybe.
Right. The only way that works is, you're right. The only way is like if you're at the same gym for a long time, like 10, 15 years, and the guys we're talking about are like in their 30s and they remember you when they were 20, they go, I'm gonna go lighter on him because I know him a long time and I know he's good, but we don't need to get any injury. He's getting any injury.
Yeah.
But that's not the situation.
Start a new gym. Yeah. If you start a new gym, you have to prove yourself. How could you prove yourself when you're old and you just want to go light with people who, it's funny.
And the other part, the thing I realized too, I miss the most is just the guys from the gym. You become friends for life in a way. Yeah. And that was, I think, the other thing that kept me around the gyms as long as I could do it. Because, Dan, since we mentioned him earlier, Dan said one time, and he was right. He said it, and he was just going to go, yeah, that is the truth. I knew it, just never verbalized it. You find out what somebody's like, who they really are. Yeah. When you work out with them, the mask is off. Yeah. Some guys are super nice and throw cheap shots, and you're like, oh yeah, you act nice, but I know who you are. You know what I mean? And some guys front like they're all cool, but after you work out, that's gone for a while. And then you go, oh, he's a good guy. He's kind of a jerk, normal life, but he's actually a good guy. And also I found, our society, modern American society, Western society, I'd say, this wasn't true before. As society is getting more specialized, we spend our lives with people that are very much like us. So like in my world, my non-fighting world, everybody was an engineer, which is a very specialized subset of America, of the world, Western world. Like I work with foreigners, but they're just like me. Their IQ is very much where mine is. They have this specialized engineering skill, right? The way I was different was I was fighting at gyms and I worked my way through college. So I had lots of friends who were just as smart, but had a different life path. And but if you don't do that, your whole life is dudes just like you. They went to colleges. Like is going to Cal Poly that different than going to USC if you get an engineering degree? No, it's actually almost the same. You know what I mean? But and I'm saying so I also found that I liked the fact that I just knew lots of cool people who I never would have met otherwise, who were a lot like me, just for some reason weren't engineers. Which is fine too. Like you. I mean, you get this philosophy degree. I've read a lot about philosophy. I'm a huge fan of Stoic philosophy and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I've read a bunch of ancient stuff. I read Book of Five Rings, 4 different translations. I have multiple Sun Tzu translations. I have my personal favorites of those. I've read a lot of Machiavelli's stuff. Because he's a philosopher. He's not a bad guy. People say. But the point is, that's something like you and I probably have in common. We don't have the engineering in common, but because of fighting, that's why we got along. Because at our core, there's a lot of commonality. And Dan, who you met, big, strong guy, and Mark, they both do computer programming. So they're great guys, but they know Kit and you and all these other guys, and that they know from fighting, who aren't computer programmers, because not many computer programmers become fighters, and that was the other thing I loved about it. Because in the past, 200 years ago, a lot of guys were farmers, and even guys that were super smart that now would become doctors. Yeah, they would be a farmer. So a farmer, a normal guy, knew all kinds of people that were different than him. But now you get on these paths. You know what I mean? And that's the thing I love about fighting is I got to be around. I have a lot of friends that aren't just like me. They got different lives. Yeah. No, I think gives you more perspective on the world. You know what I mean? You absolutely hang out with dudes, who aren't engineers in my field even. And I go, oh yeah, you got a different, they're not wrong. They just have a different world than me. They live in, and they see my world too, which is different. And that's the problem of society now, is we all get these little boxes. If you're a farmer in Illinois, you only know farmers. Yeah. Right. And if you're a factory worker, you only know factory workers, right? In the old days, it was a lot more mixed, Yeah, well, no, that's interesting. I never really looked at it that way. But I kind of
did, I mean, that kind of actually underlies this, that I'm doing this podcast, because I'm recognizing how connected we are through social media, but how I don't want to say shallow, as if it's, I like social media. I like posting things and seeing what some old friends are doing, and kind of, but not getting that deep, just kind of seeing what they say, but especially for me, because now I'm removed myself from Western society, and then even within Thai society, I'm far from the city and out in this farm, and I'm really close to my family, which I love and enjoy, in raising my son. But I've kind of disconnected from all these people. So this podcast is and most of my friends now, since I've been here, I have met, because we teach English over here. I've got some English teaching friends, but basically I have my English teaching friends. I have my college, but I don't really have any friends from college or high school that I wasn't doing MMA or wrestling with. A couple, maybe a couple childhood friends. So these podcasts for me are amazing. It's valuable to me to have this conversation, because I'm not having this conversation anymore. But for you, you've also moved from, so you're in Arizona, so you don't have any long-term friends close by. So you're probably gained some value from this too, just to.
No, absolutely. I mean, like when you started doing them, I watched them. It's just fun seeing you talk. It's been a long time since we'd hung out. And like you said, without social media, I would have lost track of you. You know what I mean? Kit, last time I saw him was right before I left Sacramento, and he told me you were in Thailand, right? But that would be like all I would have known. I don't know if he's still there or not, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, watching that podcast with Kit, man, it brought back so many memories of just Kit and you. And I mean, the way Kit talks, because he's like trilingual. I'm like, oh yeah, Kit has the way he phrases things that I know, but I haven't heard it for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And talking about his dad, I mean, I met his dad. His dad visited one time, and we went to the range and shot guns. I go, oh yeah, and I hadn't thought about it until I watched that. I go, oh yeah, Kit and I and his dad went shooting. I just forgot, because it's been like, man, I don't know, 15, 20 years. You know what I mean?
And did you know it? Because I actually kind of always wondered, but I always felt awkward to ask about it, because I knew they had to have a crazy story, because I mean, he was born in Vietnam during the Vietnam War and ends up in Japan, come here. So were you familiar with all that, or did you?
Kit and I talked about it a long time ago about basically the story that he told in the podcast. And I know when you said, I'm thinking, when you did your little precursor about like, oh yeah, the story, I go, oh yeah, I watched it again because there was some more details that I didn't know. But like, I knew the basic story, like we'll say like 75% of it. I'm like, it's a crazy story. I mean, I knew it was a crazy story, and it was like, it's an amazing story. And in some ways it's kind of still the great American story, because he ends up here anyways. I mean, I said, like, America's full of people like that, so even Kit, who ended up in Japan, he ends up here for whatever reasons, which is kind of funny in itself. But yeah, his story is crazy, and it is funny too, like when people say, whatever, the deck is stacked against you and whatever. And I go, I don't know, it's stacked pretty hard against Kit and all people like him. And I mean, Kit seemed to get through it okay, so I don't think you should complain. You know what I mean? That that somebody was mean to you in 7th grade or something, and that's why you're a failure in life. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Those are some of the things too. Yeah, I know. So I've been removed from. I'm only looking in America through the lens of social media almost. But it sure seems like things have gotten crazy on that.
I agree.
I mean, there's a pendulum that goes back and forth, and it seems like we really have gotten overly. I remember going through it already. I mean, like political correctness, and then it swung this way, and it kind of. But it's weird that last time I feel like it was on the right, it's just weird. Like,
no, you're not. I agree with you. I mean, really, whoever's in charge of the culture, right, wants to clamp any deviant thought, but deviant, we'll say opposing thought. Maybe deviant's wrong, because they'll call it deviant, but it's opposing thought. So in America, in the post-World War II era, right, the what we call the right in America, right, whatever you want to call it, whatever that means, we'll say Protestant, Christian, straight, whatever you want to call it. That was a dominant culture, and they wanted to stamp down anything that wasn't.
Oh wait. Oh, that me or you?
Oh man, it looks
that
there you go. You're
might have
back.
been me. I don't know if that was me or you. Oh
yeah. I think it is. I think my internet's still, so we're back. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah.
All I was saying is so now in America, this is my personal perspective, but the other side kind of got dominance from the 70s, 80s. You can decide when it happened, and now they're doing the same things that the right did. So really, the left wasn't really about freedom of expression. They just wanted their freedom of expression and not the right. That's just kind of how it goes. Whoever's in charge, just they don't want other people's idea. I mean, that's just how it goes, and that's always the problem,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
and I'll one last thing too on social media. What I was mentioning earlier about fighting and meeting all kinds of people, I think social media helps us stay connected, but then also lets people just hang out with people just like them and get no other views.
Oh, echo chamber, right? Things. Yeah,
it kind of self makes an echo chamber, and I think that's the negative, which I mean, like I said, some outside activity, fighting, classic car club, in your case, some local farmers co-op where people trade farming techniques, whatever. That brings different ideas together, but
and different people, because the issues that sometimes that you might argue with somebody on social media or something, they post something and you read it and you're just like, what the fuck is this person thinking or something, but actually, you don't get to realize their whole story, why they said that, the background of it. And if it wasn't just one post that you read and it was actually you were sitting down with them having a discussion and you see their face, you wouldn't have you would kind of question it and then okay. And then you'd probably understand where they're coming from, and they're not saying what you think they're saying. And stuff.
And the other part too is, and let's pretend that you're not wrong, that you and me or you and this guy are way out on some idea. But if I know you and you're my neighbor and you've helped me on my farm, or you and I have done a bunch of rounds together, I go, hey, Chris got these ideas I don't agree with on insert issue here, whatever. But he's a cool dude. I've hung out with him and done rounds, and he's a good guy. And how mad am I gonna be if I know you as a person? You know what I mean? I'm like 95% of Chris and I are aligned. This 5%, whatever the issue might be, I'm making this up because but you know what I'm getting at. But on social media, be like, F that guy. He's evil. If I see him, I want to hit him with a brick. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, I don't know. I mean, if you knew him, you know what I mean? That's like the problem with social media. Like with us and Kit and other guys, because we have a personal connection, if you post like the podcast, I watch things that you or the guys you have on. I go, I don't agree with all of it, but I don't get all mad about it. I know you. How mad am I going to be? You don't agree with me on everything, But if it's just some rando social media thing, F you, you're an idiot, How many babies you killed this week? Exactly, like that kind of horrible stuff. Like, why'd you write that? It's crazy,
That's kind of that's what I sometimes I try to do less. Sometimes I do a video response on some posts because I just to see my face and my expression, because it's so hard to read sometimes with the tone of something that it's like I'll give a big explanation on something or something, just and that's kind of what these podcasts do are that they are able to get the whole context of ideas and everything. So
that's true. And I agree to like to talk about like Rogan. People try to always go off on Rogan, but like they're always taking things out of context. If people try to make up some Rogan said something, and you watch the clip, like the whole thing, go, dude, that wasn't even what he said, or he was like, let's just run this out to the crazy world. And you're like, dude, you know what I mean? And like you're saying, the conversation also gives it perspective. You're absolutely right.
And conversations are so, these like a long conversation like this is so valuable. Even if it wasn't a podcast and I posted it, I'm actually in a way, that's one of the things because I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like I say, I'm feeling, this is definitely feeling that niche that I need.
Sure.
I need these connections. Most of the connections I had are with martial artists. And I think there is something to there. I don't think that's necessary, but like you said, I mean, yeah, it's usually something that you get personal with somebody in one way or another, and that's just a shortcut to it for sure. But I feel like we're like, right now we're a model. I think people can listen to us and would kind of, I actually wonder if there's a generation that doesn't really know how to have a long conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
And one thing that would be helping are the podcasts, because when you look at like news media, like the way that it's just kind of developed, and it's not their fault. I mean, it's just a combination of factors such as, commercial breaks, and we have to put everything into bite-sized pieces. Information needs to be like, you need to be able to sum up everything. I mean, even the way we write and we learn to write essays and stuff, or certain things and organize things. Sometimes these long discussions, they need to be had with our loved ones. So that's what I hope this encourages anybody that does stumble this far and are listening to us ramble about everything, is that like, I need to have this conversation with my friends, especially the people that maybe if you have any like issues with, but you were close to them, or you just drifted apart for whatever reason. In our case, we were never really extremely close, but we did have that connection, from martial arts. So like I said, that's definitely an easier way to get close quick. I mean, if you like add up the time we were together, there's so many more people in my life who I've spent much more time with that I don't have any connection with. Yeah. So yeah. Any final thoughts about that? Or
no, I'm with you on that, man. Yeah. You're kind of referring to too, like where media is gone. They can tell when you click on something. They've also found that negativity spurs more response than positivity. So if I say something horrible, Chris David's a horrible person, people click on that, right? If I say Chris David, great guy, whatever, I'll move on. And that also feeds it, the conflict, right?
Yeah.
So
it does. Yeah.
That's good for short-term marketing, I guess, but bad as a society, but I do feel there's less holding us together. People don't join clubs like they used to. I mean, again, you look at it in America, you had like the Elks Lodge and all those kind of fraternal organizations. All those in churches, those are all fraternal. They're organizations of people. The attendance drops, and then people engage online more. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, you've chosen, like, it seems from what you're doing and what I've seen, kind of like the old school way. Go back to like being a Midwestern farmer almost, right? I mean, you've chosen that, and I don't know, like I said, how much you engage with your neighbors and stuff, but probably more than the average guy living in a subdivision in America.
Yeah. It's actually, we it's really nice. We got this. We bought an orchard in the middle of other orchards, so we actually have no houses neighbors, but the farmers come regularly to tend on their land. So so
they don't live on their orchards like
nobody else lives on our orchard. In fact, and one of the reasons we got a really good deal on this land, it was it's about $30,000. It's like an acre and a half. It's on two rivers. It touches two rivers, and I mean, Thailand, it's a lot cheaper, and we're in a rural Thailand. But also one thing that made it a little less was that it's right by open crematorium, the village crematorium, where they have the processions with when anybody dies in the village. There's a procession. They burn the body there. Thai are very superstitious people, and some people don't like delivery people. We have to run out a different way. They won't cross. People don't want to cross. It makes us really safe. People don't come here at night. Nobody's here at night. So all our interactions in the daytime, the farmers come. Everyone thought we were really weird to build this. But so the land was a little cheaper. Nobody has houses in this area. But because we built a house here, we've seen houses get a little closer because nobody wanted to be the house closest to the open crematorium.
Sure.
But we've kind of broke that. So now we're like, if there's any wandering ghosts, they'll go to that house first. So
that's awesome. I mean, I say awesome. One that's cool that you're on a river and then you got an acre and a half. That's all cool. But that's a great story about the superstition in the crematorium, man. That means when your boy gets older, like when he'll have all kinds of stories like, oh yeah, I grew up,
yeah,
you know what I just like. It's kind of like the Addams Family almost, right? Like the haunted house almost. Like, wow, that's funny, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So it is. There is less, and then out here, they actually the dialect of Thai they speak. They actually, I can only speak central dialect, and I can speak it pretty well, but they have to. They're actually not even that good at speaking that. They speak a dialect that's not, and so they're always trying. They'll try for me. They won't for my wife. My wife's not from this area either, so. But they won't. They're not. She's Thai, so they're not going to speak central dialect with her. They just speak.
Sure.
So she has to learn their dialect.
I get it, but since you're not a native Thai, they're willing to give you a break and try.
They're willing to go out on a limb and try to speak central dialect with me. But I have a hard time, so I'm not able to. So basically, I don't have deep conversations, although I am close to some of the farmers. I know them. They're short conversations. I'm not able to go in as deep. My wife does go a little deeper into them. So yeah, I definitely need this. So
thanks. Yeah, that's tough. I can see though. To give you a little history on a little bit minor history. I'm like half Italian, but the reason why I bring that up is the older Italians in the family, they had the same issues. I mean, like my great grandmother and all them never really spoke English. I'm just telling you. So like they lived in America for years, and we're always just kind of having to talk to other Italians, right? Because so that's what your experience isn't. I'm not minimizing. I'm just saying I think it's pretty typical for immigrants. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of is,
Yeah.
And I had a friend whose dad was from Italy, and he spoke English but had a super thick accent, and a lot of people said they couldn't understand him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like that's just the nature. There's no way around it, I think.
Yeah.
And then like you said, you're not, and if you were in Bangkok, you would be so immersed in it, right?
Yeah.
But like you're kind of isolated, so you talk here and there, but you're not like 12 hours a day immersed in it, which probably makes it slower too. And like you said, the dialect, so it's not even. You can't get it from TV or movies or anything,
Yeah. No, yeah. And now my son's he's 3.5. We're gonna do homeschooling. There's actually a really good homeschooling network here because I want him to have social and a lot of social interactions too. But so I'm gonna. He's already that was my goal, is just stay ahead of him. I can stay ahead of him, right? He's a baby. When he came out, I gotta just stay ahead of him. But and so I'm trying to, like, I'm always listening to it. Sometimes I try to have my wife interact with me in Thai, but it's hard sometimes. She speaks. When I first met her English wasn't as good as it is now, but because I didn't have any Thai, I met her like 6 months after I arrived here, and I was learning Thai, but obviously we're going to speak English because that's my Thai was nothing at that point. So like, and then now she understands my English like perfectly. There's probably other people she wouldn't understand. Like we speak pretty quickly, but I can speak at this speed and she's going to understand me completely, maybe not someone else. But I can see her dialogue with my son is different. It's more interactive dialogue. Like we speak on a more of like information level. I don't, it's hard to have like, don't do that, pick that up. Right? I mean, she doesn't talk to me like that in English or Thai. I mean, because I'm, to learn a language, I realize like you actually need that first. Like when we learn a foreign language, you try to jump in it almost too technical. We need that, like, do this, don't do that, touch that, grab that, like a real basic. So sometimes I just sit and watch them interact and I'm able to absorb that.
Sure.
I just pretend to be my son and okay, what would I do in that situation? Because she's having, there's more interaction. It's hard to have that interaction, like a low level interaction on things that don't matter, basically. So I still think I can read better. I can read. He can't read yet, so I'm like, I can tell he actually can understand emotionally. He understands it a little better than me already.
Sure.
But still, I still feel like I'm ahead of him. So I need to stay ahead of him. And that's my goal, is just stay ahead of him.
So, but yeah, dude, the Thai move for you. I mean, what spurred it? You just kind of fell in love with them when you went there, or was it you know what I mean? Because like you'd been in Japan before that, and you know.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always, from a young age, I was always attracted to this Eastern philosophy, Eastern. You know, I grew up, you know, there's no religion. I was kind of drawn to Buddhism and Taoism and karate, of course. I mean, Japan is just the first. That's Japan. I just thought Japan, Karate Kid, Japan was what I thought I liked when I visualized Eastern things, and then but I was in Japan, and then but actually before, did I go to India before Japan? But I also had I backpacked India. I had at Sierra College. I had an Indian friend, and he invited me to go visit his land or his area, and I travel a lot there. So I had two perspectives of the East, but pretty different. Those are kind of the far difference. Yeah. Indian culture and Japanese culture. There are some similarities, but funny enough, Thailand is actually, I would say, it has a lot of Indian influence, a lot of Hinduism. You know, a lot of the Buddhist temples have all these Hindu concepts, and then of course Thailand has its own unique culture, but it also has a lot of Chinese influence, which of course was Chinese influence Japan. So although Japan, I don't think directly influenced Thailand, although they did occupy for a little while of World War II. For the most part, I wouldn't say that Japanese had direct, but I'd still say Thailand does have these traits that I liked in Japan. I like the old school samurai style part of Japan, the karate, the martial arts aspect of Japan. Thailand has that, and Thailand might even have it more because they were never officially colonized by any Western country. They were colonized by the Myanmar, I'd say, pre-British rule, like they're occupied by, Myanmar kings. Actually, this region, the northern region specifically, before Thailand was united. So this area has a lot of Myanmar culture. So I actually did visit Thailand one time when I was in Japan. We did like a 5 days. I visited Thailand. So that was my first, and I was like, wow, I actually was really moved by just Thai culture and Thailand as kind of like that. This is actually whatever in my mind I thought the East was when I was living in America. Yeah. I think around 12 years old was really when I started getting into it. I think the martial arts helped me, but I started studying Buddhism and Siddhartha, like the story of Siddhartha. So I was into India, and so Thailand was always kind of on my radar, even when coming back from Japan. That was kind of when I was introduced to Thailand when I was in Japan, and I went to Muay Thai fights, and Muay Thai started realizing, okay, this Muay Thai thing's legit, and then so it was always kind of in the back of my mind brewing during the 10 years after I returned, or even more, maybe than about 10 years of coming back from Japan, finishing my degree, doing my MMA career. That it was always kind of in the back of my mind. But actually, I'd gone to Philippines and Korea first. My brother was stationed in Korea, and I stayed with him a while. Had some more deals in Philippines. I didn't really like the Philippines culture as much. It has more Western influence, I'd say, and Thailand does still have this Thai-ness that you don't get anywhere. So I kind of wiggled my way back. I was like, I wanted to get back there. I had a friend, he was on the podcast too, Brody Farber, who kind of got me into MMA. He had a connection here at a Muay Thai gym in Phuket originally. So Phuket is an island down south that's a really touristy island.
And I've heard of it. There's a lot of Muay Thai there. A lot of Americans and Europeans go there.
It's a beautiful place.
I mean, Muay Thai.
You do get a sense of Thai-ness, and that's where I met my wife. She was, because of tourism, she was managing a hotel, or actually at that time she was just working at a hotel. Kind of, she built her way up, and we were doing a lot of traveling around Thailand and getting kind of just, we'd have a lot of conversations about what we want to do and stuff. And that's when we had visited this northern region of Chiang Mai, and we saw how cheap the land was. Like Phuket land is really expensive, and we kind of got, and she was making good money managing. I was teaching at a university. I mean, total together is maybe $3,000 a month, which doesn't sound much in dollars, but our rent is $500, meals. We were working so much. I mean, we were easily able to put $1,000 a month. Like, I mean, you can't even spend that much money if you're working full time. You could blow through that if you could come here on vacation, blow through thousands of dollars, no problem. But if you're living here working, 12 hours a day, you don't have time to spend that kind of money. The rent's cheap, the food is cheap, your cost of living is cheap. So we were just piling money,
And like you mentioned, if you're saving $1,000 a month, that means like in 3 years you could pay for this place you mentioned.
Yeah, which was basically that was our plan. 5 years. Let's just work hard for 5 years. Our plan was actually buy land for like half that. I think because this was $1 million bought, 500,000 bought there, so it'd be 15,000. Buy the land. You could easily buy a nice plot of land for $15,000 or $10,000, and then build a house for $10,000 or $15,000. That was our plan. Sure. We found this land, though, is just perfect, but it was pretty much going to wipe all our money out. And then, but we were thinking, we can build in time. Let's get this land, go up. Let's get the nicer land. We don't need a nice house. And then we just got this little portable house, which is actually, this is my office. It's a 1 room. Yeah, it's a 1 room thing. Okay. It's got a little outside. It's got a little balcony. It was brought here on a truck, like a little, it's not really a trailer because it's a square, and it's all steel beams. They assembled some of it once they got here, but a lot of it was just brought on a truck. It was $6,000 for it.
Oh, and cool.
We lived here for a year. My son was born. We were still living here. And then actually that's what our neighbors are also like construction. You pay them by the day and buy the material, and we were able to build it. We got
so you have another house. So you have a house then next to this.
So now this is my office. This is my man cave.
Cool.
So I have awesome. My own office. It's about 50 yards from the house, and it's kind of it's become this is where because now I teach English online. That's my job. Yeah. I just do it on the weekends, make enough money. But we don't have any mortgage or anything. We own the land, and when we built the land, we built it as we went with the extra money that I was able to make and buy material, pay my the local farmers they do everything. It's crazy. It's so much cheaper because you don't have any. I mean, it can be dangerous and nobody's going to be held accountable if something goes wrong but electricity. He does everything. My neighbor, he's almost 70, but his wife, his nephew, and his son, like just their family, their little crew, have done all the construction type stuff that I can't do. I'm more into landscaping and art, but I don't really know how to lay bricks and do wiring. I do water. I taught myself how to do the water because I was real specific. I was like, I want to be able to do that on my own because I've got irrigation, different pipes and pumps. So I do the water, but electricity, I'm like, I don't really want to mess around with that. And so he does, the electricity, the cement work and stuff. I don't like a lot of cement, but just the foundation, lay the bricks. They do it real interesting here too. They actually did it my style. It was really, they didn't do any plans. They just do it. Like I just as they're doing it, I tell them what to do. All the wiring is on the outside and like just put in PVC pipes and bracketed on the wall. So he's just how they just do it step by step. Okay, how big do you want the total house? And then boom, after that, okay, do you want a wall here? And we just have one big room, one big kitchen, and then my mom actually she came over here. I built another room. Now she's living up in she's in a living center. Actually became more. There's a lot of other foreigners. She built a little too.
Your mom lives in Thailand now?
Yeah. So she has dementia. Like,
okay.
She came over here. I mean, she's really present. She's not like she's here. You can have a conversation with her, but her memory is declining quickly. She lived with me for a year here, so we built onto our house. Like I said, it was real easy. Just hire them again. Just kind of added on another room with another bathroom. But we're so secluded. It was a little difficult. She enjoyed living with us, being with her grandson and stuff. But then we were looking. We could tell she's more social. I mean, she wanted social interaction with foreigners and stuff.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
and we found a place that's really good, and she makes decent money with Social Security. Wouldn't be able to afford this in America, but a nice living center it's like outside on the mountains. She has her own room, a lot of grass, and then a lot of other foreigners from different areas. But yeah, she's got a boyfriend now that that's kind of has her same condition, but they're able to remember each other. But then I just had her stay with me for 3 days here, and then she completely forgot. She had no idea that she had a boyfriend. I said, "Yeah, you have a boyfriend there." She's kind of like a little girl almost, and kind of excited to see him. I don't know if he's going to remember what I look like. I don't remember what he looks like, but
right.
As soon as she saw him, they reconnected and everything. So anyway, yeah, that was, I mean, so that's interesting. I'm happy. Everything's, she's comfortable.
So here. But to your point though, if you had the similar place in America and you wanted to add a room and a bathroom for your mom, it probably would have cost you $200,000.
Oh yeah,
or something.
Yeah.
You'd have got a guy to do it, and there would have been the inspections. It probably would have been $200,000 in like a year and a half. And you're like, I don't even want to wait a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we were able to do it. Actually, the funny thing is, I didn't realize her condition quite, because the last time I had seen her, she visited me, and then from here she went to the Philippines, and then COVID hit, and she was locked down in a very. She likes to walk and do all these exercises. She was locked. She was staying. My brother has he has a daughter there and a family there, kind of, and then but she was just locked in this very small room in this small village. She wasn't allowed outside and walk and stuff. She was able to go out on this porch to get a little fresh air. That triggered it from my perspective. That triggered a decline in this in her condition. When she left here, I didn't really, looking back, I kind of could see some maybe possible early stages, but I didn't. Nothing was concerning to me. I mean, she was taking the bus going to town on her own. I didn't feel worried about her at all. During that time, I think it triggered it. Then she finally did get away from there, moved to Orville, where my oldest brother lives, and we were planning for her to come out here. And then I kind of realized, like, whoa, I realized her condition had worsened a lot, and my brother kind of told me. And then, so I already had actually a building. She actually had some money that she gave to build a house. So I had a separate house on the river, closer to the river, but it did have stairs. It was two stories. It was small. Sure. That too was also like this office where it's brought in on trucks and assembled, but it was 2 stories. It was a little bigger, a little better. And that I had that built for her, and she came here and she was staying there, but she'd be wandering around at night without a flashlight, and there's like a cliff, and I was really, I was like,
sure, yeah,
we got to get her here. So yeah, and to your point, yeah, I was able to build. I was like, we need to do something else. I want her attached to my house and close to me. I got the lights on. She knows where I'm at, because that one was, it was disconnected, and it gets pitch black at night. She'd wake up, kind of be confused where she is, and wander around. So, so basically, yeah, to your point, yeah, maybe $10,000, and my neighbors built it, no permits. Yeah, within a month, a whole, whole new room, her own bathroom, everything we were able to build. So, that's definitely, like I said, there's no accountability like that. One, it has a balcony, and the balconies are on stilts, and they go out into the cliff, and so it's really nice. But like, if they didn't do it, and you're an engineer, so I don't know, when they came, they don't really, the equipment they use is not that.
Yeah,
they're just doing it, and they're just like kind of putting cement. I'm thinking like it could easily sink.
Yeah,
and if it does, I'm out. I could probably, but I could hire a crane, probably lift it back up, and they that's how they do stuff out here, is more tinkering and stuff. I don't think they have. So that's kind of why I was asking too about the tinkering thing. The trial and error system seems to really work out here.
Yeah. What happens a lot of times when things get mature, right? Whether it's building in America, let's say, or Europe, right? But we'll say building in a Western country, or engineering for cars, which is a pretty mature industry, right?
Yeah.
What happens is things get to where the risk reward of failure is, they're like, oh, any failure, there's all these consequences, right? So then it clamps down, and the creativity and the flexibility is gone, and it costs a lot more. But the way you're describing it, where you're at, is you know, it's a little more freeform. And if there is a problem, you redo it and you get there, and it's still, you could do it twice and it'd still be way cheaper than doing it once in America. And there's the risk of failure, but you probably can't sue anybody.
Yeah,
In
no,
America,
definitely not. Yeah, there's
no, you're gonna sue somebody and get like $3 million. So you know, they're gonna make sure they can't get sued. You know, I mean, but you're right. That's the difference too between, back to engineering terms. I learned this from older guys when I was young. They said there's development engineers, which is what I was describing I am, and there's maintenance engineers who are maintaining a product line or maintaining a design. So the first car guys, people talk about, oh, cars were so much cooler in the old days. Well, they weren't as good, but they were experimenting and finding out cool things. So there's been these periods where cars were crazy and all over the place and awesome, and there's a lot of differences. Now they're almost all the same because it's a very mature world.
They figured out what works best. There's not, right.
So every engineer there, they're not really creative because there's no space to be creative. Even if they're creative guys, they can't be creative at work. And that's how it is with construction in America. But where you're at, you could probably be like, yeah, I want 3 stories and one coming off the side. Like, yeah, man, sure, we'll do it. Right.
Yeah, that's what I did. Because of the orchards, these trees aren't that tall. Like we have there's a lot of, we're pretty far from the mountains, but this is a mountainous region. So there's mountainscape all 360. But because we're in an orchard, now the trees aren't that high. If you can just get above those trees, you've got all these beautiful mountain views. So that's what I wanted. I wanted a 3-story high building, and that's what we have. It's 2 stories, and then and then you can climb up and get on the 3rd story as outside balcony. So there's a 3rd story high balcony. And that's what I wanted. And that's my mom's house there. The structure of the building's really cheap. It's just steel and wood and stuff. And then they put cement, and like I said, we're in an area with a lot of sand and stuff and wet, but I mean it hasn't sunk yet. I don't know. Right. I mean they did I've been amazed. Like they built this one thing, they had no level, they used rope and water, just a water. But I mean, well, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with all the work.
They did a plumb bob, right, where it's a string with a weight, whether it's water or lead, right? Yeah, and that's the Romans used those, by the way. They still use them.
I mean, it's funny. Yeah, my neighbor, the tools they use, and they don't. I mean, it's funny. I mean, the stuff they do, but I've been impressed with everything. Everything.
There's another thing too. Back to engineering, this ties in is you get like 80 or 90% of the benefit with like 20% of the effort. The last 10% takes all the effort. So, that's the other thing too, right? Like to get it to be perfect, it'd be like, let's do a soil measurement. Then, there's all these things that like is a lot more money, right? And does it make it better? A little bit, but it's not that much better. And like you said, the prefab thing makes a lot of sense. In America, people just don't want to do it. I think economically in America, the reason why prefabs they exist but they're not as popular is because so much of my cost of building a house is the permitting and all these other things, right? Yeah. That I might as well spend 20% more on the house and get like a custom deal. Versus if you flip it, you say there's no permitting, 80% of it is the land. 80% of it is the house. Well, then you want to make the house super efficient in a factory and drop it. In America, right? You flip it and you go, I got all this other stuff that's not the house. You go, well, the house is not all of it. It's like less than half. To make it custom. Make it on site how I want it. You know what I mean?
Makes sense. And
it flips the economics a little bit. Whereas when, but it makes sense. Why don't we have factory homes in America where you put modules together, right? You have a living room module, a kitchen module. You set them down. You connect a couple wires and a couple pipes. You're done, right? That makes sense. Well, not when I have $300,000 in permitting,
Yeah, exactly. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't look at it that way too. Yeah. So it's that's.
So that house is empty? Do you like rent it out to people or Airbnb?
No. I don't. I mean, no. A guest house. So you want to come? You're welcome. Come on.
I might. I've never thought about going to Thailand. Maybe I will now.
No. I mean that wholeheartedly, and I'm not just saying that. I actually, I want to actually in the future. I want to have like a gathering. Actually, it's during this time. Like it's funny. I call it the gathering. I mentioned. You remember the gathering? Did you ever go to that?
Yeah. I was never a full Jutnik guy, but I knew about him. And here's my piece of trivia. I went up and worked out with Team Quest one weekend. I worked out with like Matt. I'm dropping names, but they're not my buddies. I worked out with them for one weekend. It was a seminar I paid, but it was like Evan Tanner, Dan Henderson, and Matt Linland. So it was super awesome. Okay.
Yeah, Evan Tanner's he's
one. Oh yeah, I love Evan Tanner. Great, super nice guy. You know, it was a shame, you know, what happened, but he was a super nice guy. But the point of the story is, I'm tying this in. It was up in Oregon, right? Like Portland. I get off from the airport, and there's all this stuff for the gathering because one of Jetnik's guys was in Portland, so they were all there, and I saw some Kempo guys I knew randomly in the airport when I was going to work out with Team Quest because they were there for Jetnik's gathering, and it was a sideline. It's my trivia, but those gatherings were big, man. They had a lot of people.
Yeah,
right? I mean, they were big.
Yeah, no, they were fun, and too. That for me, I was in middle school and high school. I mean, it was fun stuff to get. And to me, I was coming down to Sacramento. It was actually raw. I later found out, I was like, hey, that's right. When I went to Sierra College, I was like, hey, that's where I went. I didn't know. Yeah. I wasn't actually that familiar with the Sacramento area. When I was in Orville, I was like South Northern California to people. Like I always get up. I went to Chico, Lassen, Mount Shasta, or, you know, I was always going up. I never really came down to Sacramento. So I was like that. Yeah. Orville and North.
Right. No, and
Yuba City, Yuba City, Marysville, that was as far south as that.
And for people watching that don't know, I mean, where you grew up was 45 minutes or an hour from Rockland, which is like the northern edge of the Sacramento area. So from Sacramento itself, man, it's another 20-30 minutes. So you're a solid hour, 15, hour and a half from Sac. So that's far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we go to Chico. Chico had everything we needed, malls.
Right.
Except that were better than ours.
So back to your gathering. So you're saying you want to have a gathering?
Yeah. So I want to. I officially have it. I mean, I've got a plan it's a 17-year plan. When I hit 60, I'm 41, 42 right now. I don't even know 42, 19, 42. And so I want to. I want to work and you know, do teaching online and stuff. Maybe do whatever. And at 60, I'm hoping to be like self-sustaining, like sure. I'm kind of using the term buying my way out of the system, where I need to buy. I know I want to buy things so I don't have monthly cost on any level, or at least minimal, where I'm, you know, and then basically in Thailand, in Chiang Mai specifically, it's pretty hot all the time, except for from about really. The two best months are December and January. It's like perfect here because it's cool, and it's if you go up in the mountains, it actually is cold. You need a sweater or something, you know. But you know, it doesn't freeze. I mean, we're talking, you know, I don't know. Now I'm thinking Celsius, like 15 degrees Celsius. It's 50, 60. I mean, you know, at night, in the middle of the night, you might need a blanket, but it never gets. The days are like perfect. They're crisp. They're cool. So it's like that would be the time to do it. So yeah, basically, I want to have some sort of, so that would be further in the future when I'd want to be able to host, you know, larger groups or just small groups, but just kind of always be open during those 2 month periods, and then have people they can come in and out. There's a lot of local, you know, there's a lot of culture and local and activities and elephant sanctuaries and trekking and looking at the mountain hill tribe villages and stuff. There's a lot of stuff to do around here. And have my place just kind of as a little home base. I want to recreate these. The only thing that is more that would be more valuable than these podcasts that I'm doing, because these are incredible, would be to have some face-to-face conversations with you as well, and maybe in a bigger group too. Not a big group, but just 3 or 4 people at different times. And you might not know each other, but everyone would know me. Or some people could bring, if you had a friend that I hadn't met, you could bring as well. And there'd be other people. So it would kind of be like just a old school style.
No, that's a great excuse for me, because like, to your point, I've totally considered it, because like I've been for work, I got to go to Europe and see some interesting parts of Europe. I mean, like kind of the backwoods parts, you know, like Basque Country in Spain. Yeah. You know, I wasn't in Madrid. I was up on the coast in Basque Country. I was in, beautiful, you know, and some other places too. And then I also went back to Sicily with my sister to see where our great-grandparents came from, which was like the middle of the country in Sicily, which is pretty rural. But I've never been to Asia, and I'm just saying that, I'd be in to check it out, you know, just to see it. And like what you're describing, you know, like you mentioned, most people go to Bangkok or other big cities.
Yeah, the Phuket is the big because it's a beach. It's kind of like maybe
but like
Hawaii.
What you described is more like how most Thais maybe live. You know, when you're outside the city, you know, like you grew up in Oroville. People don't realize most Americans, Oroville isn't that different. I mean, you know this because you're from there, but like Oroville is a lot like living in Illinois if you're not in Chicago, or you know, Missouri if you're not in St. Louis. So it's like most Americans don't live like those big cities, you know, where how you grew up, how most guys grow up, you know? And so like, if I came to, that's why like I went to Sicily, I saw like, it wasn't a big city, it was out in the country. I mean, I was in the city for part of it, but you know what I mean? And it'd be cool to see, like when I went to work in Europe, I was working, so I was with working engineers. I saw how like most Europeans live. They don't live like Americans think. You know, they have cars. They all drive 45 minutes to work each day, just like an American does. They don't take the train because there's no trains to the outside towns like people think. And you know, it's like they have trains between their big cities. But that's like. But my point is, they don't all take. It's like if you go to New York, you think, you know, who needs a car? Everybody just takes the subway. Well, that's people in New York. No one else lives that way. Well, you go to Bordeaux, France, or you go to. I was out in the country in England. They do the same thing. They have houses with yards, and they drive 30 minutes a day to work, or 45 minutes, just like I did. They live a life like I did in America, just it was in England or Europe. You know, you know what I mean? And I'm just saying, like, that's just so, like, I mean, it'd be cool to see how most Thais really live, you know, because that's like, you know, or what is real Thailand, you know,
that's what attracted us to, when we did travel around. Now, I did choose this area because actually Chiang Mai is, it's the second largest city in Thailand. We're an hour away. So, you definitely get to our villages. There's no foreigners out here. So this, I'm definitely living the real Thailand, but it's nice because there is an international airport in Chiang Mai, so you could fly right in to there, and then they have so many. Then they have like the Hmong, like in Oroville, there's a lot of Hmong, so I got to meet. I was always kind of interested in Hmong culture, although a lot of the Hmong are also from like
Laos, right?
Lao border more so, but there are they're tribal. They were actually they're Chinese. They're from China. Like that is the second largest ethnic minority in China is the Hmong population.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew them as the mountain people from Laos, but I didn't realize that
they were. There is actually the largest group of them are still in China, but a lot of them were, for whatever reason, they moved into these different areas, and then that's one of my favorite places is there's this village, but it was sponsored by a royal project, so they gave them enough money to like, because they were doing all the poppy farms and stuff, and there's but Thailand, I'm sure they've got small key poppy farms, but there used to be major. I mean, it was run by they wiped those out, and now they promoted them they've made their villages are beautiful. They create this amazing gardens. They do a lot of handicrafts. They have a traditional village in the back. You can go in the back and see, this is a real regular village. This isn't like phony, but they do have a front area for tourism. So it's real, but it's also really nice. Like there's no way a regular mountain tribe would be able to produce this magnificent garden, because they are partly funded. They're like recognized ethnic groups that is supported, and so that's that area is cool. I would want everybody to visit that area. Within Chiang Mai has a lot of festivities going on. It's actually Chiang Mai center is cool. It's there's a moat. The city center is a lot of temples. It's square and it has a moat around it, and it still has some of the ancient walls around it. And there's the law that you can't build like above the highest temple or something. So there's no skyscrapers. There are on the outside, but no, like it's a real small town feel, even though it's a large town. Because actually Thailand or Bangkok is called like a proton city, where it's 10% of the populations live in Bangkok. And even though we're the second largest city, we're still relatively small. It's not. There is a lot of traffic in certain areas, but but there's no skyscrapers. There's no, it's all spread out. It's still a lot of nature, a lot of jungle. So I say that I'm promoting this area as a great place to come. It wouldn't be, that's actually why we moved here. It's not like I'm here and hey, and trying to talk that my wife and I traveled all the way around. She's not from this area either. We travel all around and looking for the best place that kind of has a little bit of everything. We don't want to be so far removed. Like there's an American consulate there if I, need to do anything. The immigration office is there. Yeah. I'm married. I still need to report every 90 days. It's kind of ridiculous, but
90.
Yeah, every 90 days. I can do it online, but sometimes if the system's down, I got to go in person. So, and if I were further rural, it would make it really difficult to have to do these type of things. So I'm in a perfect location where I'm definitely deep in Thai, but I'm close enough to this city that is, and they do get a lot of a lot of tourism, a lot of Chinese tourism, a lot of European, Russian, less. There's still I see a lot of Americans too, but it is more of a European, Chinese, Russian tourist hub. But actually all of Thailand is, even Phuket was like that too. Not as much. Yeah, Thailand is not as much of an American tourist hub, but all Eurasia I would say is. So definitely. I mean, obviously that I'm looking further for the gathering. I would love people to come and give me some ideas too. Sure. Yeah, one-on-one. So I have a guest house. The cost here is the plane ticket to come here. It's really cheap living. Obviously, sure. You could stay here for free, but even when you're not staying here, if you wanted to do some little treks, or Chiang Rai, which is, I don't know if you remember where the soccer team got trapped in a cave. That was kind of
I remember all that. Yeah,
that was in Chiang Rai. Chiang Rai is also really beautiful things, and then Chiang Rai is the Golden Triangle. That's where Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand touch, and that's where the big opium trades took place. Yeah. Supposedly, you could trade a kilo of gold for a kilo of raw opium or something. It was like that was the deal or something. When I was younger, I remember all of that. That was the big thing. Like, really, it was during Vietnam era and after is when that was like the Golden Triangle. Yeah, and there was this huge market where, right, the mafia in Europe as well as America, that's how they smuggle all the opium and heroin, right? Because in the 70s, heroin was a big thing, and then it kind of went out of style and cocaine became the thing. But like movies in the 60s and 70s was all about heroin. Yeah. So that was at its peak. Now opioids are back in, but unfortunately, right. But when I was a kid, man, it was all cocaine and meth that everybody did. There was no one did heroin, but it's just a dip change in styles of drugs. That's how come in the 80s was all those South American going to Colombia. I mean, from Colombia doing all the cocaine, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's an amazing region. I mean, right, like right now, Myanmar is still. It's funny. I mean, these wars. I mean, Ukraine, Russia, and Palestinians. Like, but actually, as terrible and horrific as these wars go, and if you actually do now with videos, we actually see things that always go on. I think, and we're just kind of more up in our face. But this is going on in like Africa all the time. I mean, we don't really hear about that. I mean, and it's right now in Myanmar. I mean, it's hard to get any. I was actually Myanmar civil war happened before Russia invaded Ukraine, but it's all internal, and it's like, but we do get some things creep over our borders sometimes and stuff, but they're trying to contain it, and it's really horrific. There's some crazy. And you're right on it being the kind of the natural order. I mean, if you go to Cambodia with the killing fields in the 70s, right? Yeah, we kind of heard about it in the 80s. Right, but it was kind of after a lot of it had happened. Nowadays, you would have known real time that they killed like a third of their population. Exactly, yeah. Right? So, you're right. The natural order. Now, in America, that doesn't happen, and in Europe, it doesn't really happen, particularly Western Europe. So we kind of go, oh, this isn't the natural order of things. Life's not like this. Well, no. When you go to Africa or you go to parts of Asia that aren't Japan, this is kind of how it rolls. Yeah. In Thailand, for whatever reason, Thailand hasn't had any major civil war internal violence for a long time, right? I mean, for whatever reason, I'm not an expert on Thai history, but they haven't. It's been the king for whatever reason.
They just kind of have this cult. Like you live there. My understanding is the Thais are super nice unless you say something or do something to the king, right? It's like, oh, we're all friendly. Please come hang out. And then I like deface something of the king and they're throwing me in jail, right? So there's this thing like that keeps them together, right? Like we all are Thai, we get along, the king's our guy, let's all be cool, right? But that's just like, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting, I mean, and you know, I mean, yeah, Thai, I think having Muay Thai, I think having going back to martial arts, I think having martial arts as core in culture is essential. And Japan too, unfortunately, I mean, Japan was, looking at, Japan was those, that samurai spirit. I mean, that's without getting, who knows why. I mean, from what I understand, America, when they dropped the bomb, they knew that they could defeat Japan in a long, bloody war, but they didn't want to do that because they knew these people will die for.
Well, to your point, you're right. There's two main events. First off, if you read about Saipan, when America conquered Saipan, the Japanese first had told Saipan was a colony of Japan, and there's a bunch of Japanese there, and women held their babies and jumped off a cliff to their death because they were told that the American soldiers were going to eat them. So our soldiers like saw bodies at the bottom of cliffs with babies, and they're like, wow, this is crazy, right? Then, so that was like one thing where we're like, they're willing to go all in, that like a Westerner would just never do that, you know?
Yeah.
And then we conquered Okinawa conventionally. And that was not the mainland Japan, right? But it was part of core Japan, right? And it was like, I think Japan conquered Okinawa like in the 1400s or something. So it was viewed as Japan, even though the Okinawa people get kind of screwed over and all that. It was, and they looked at that and said, this is what it took. And they had some crazy estimate, like it was going to be 1 million American deaths and like 5 or 10 million Japanese deaths, because that was what Okinawa was. They go, Okinawa was this big, and they just projected it, right? And they said, okay. And they're like, that's crazy. Like, we'll do it, but let's avoid it. Because you're right. They just knew what was coming. And they'd have been house-to-house fighting in caves and everything. And
exactly. And I feel that's Thailand. I feel like if somebody wanted to invade Thailand, China could take over Thailand easily militarily. I mean, Thailand is not a military strength at all.
And it's not that big. It's not that big.
It's not that big population. I mean, but I don't think the Thai people are. I mean, you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to fight every single individual family. There's a man in that house that is gonna fight you. So you're gonna. So I feel that.
And one more thing too. Then they'll guerrilla war you too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you take over, and then there's going to constantly be blowing stuff up.
You literally would have to. I mean, you'd have to exterminate everybody. And that's actually what in the culture. I said Myanmar actually ruled over this region of Thailand. So Thailand wasn't united. They ruled over for it was like 170 years, and they took it back. I mean, that means there's still some sort of Thainess for generations that knew they were occupied by this. It was like the Burmese king, and he had all these wives, and one of the wives ended up poisoning him, and that was how one of their movies. I'm sure it was much more complicated than that, but that was one of the things that. But how does this woman have this identity with Thainess? And her, I mean, they've been occupied by this Burmese rule, and for so long that they and there is still this animosity to I say Burmese, Myanmar. Synonyms. I still say Burmese people, but the country is Myanmar. The language is Burmese. But it's actually Myanmar. But it's hard to say Myanmarese. I don't know. So
I know what you mean, man.
So again, those, and then it was shortly after that Thailand became unified. They realized like we need to for strength. They connected all the kingdoms because they used to just be these small kingdoms and stuff. But I guess they spoke the same language. But for whatever reason. There were some also during European colonization. England had they had the West with Myanmar, and down south Malaysia, and the French had Laos and Vietnam, and Thailand was kind of this buffer zone, kind of like a Ukraine, and nowadays Ukraine before all this ordeal, which actually kind of was nice to have a buffer zone. I think if the English would have invaded and tried to take over more area, that would have sparked France to do it, and they kind of had a mutual agreement. Let's not try to take over Thailand. Let's leave that as a buffer zone. So there, and Thailand was bigger. Actually, Laos was part of Thailand and there was a debacle with a French thing. They had to kind of King Rama V, one of the main kings of Thailand, kind of had to succeed some land to the French to maintain sovereignty over this area. So there's a lot of political things that went through, but Thailand is definitely a unique place in the region. They definitely have this strong unity of Thailand, and on top of all that, I think the Muay Thai is a major part of it. I mean, not everybody knows Muay Thai, but actually, I mean, Thai guys are tough. I mean, for sure. When you think of Asians, a lot of, I mean, of course, yeah, if you think kung fu and stuff, but like when I go to Japan, of course, I was training with it. I don't think of modern Japanese men as very tough, you know, like not they are the martial artists are. I mean, there are a group of, you know, whoop my ass every day. That's what made me such a great fighter. It's there, but it's not in the culture anymore.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, isn't the phrase "soy boy" come from Japan?
Yeah.
That phrase of like you're just basically no testosterone. That's a lot of the modern Japanese guys don't even know how to approach women or any of that. It's like a thing that's been happening like in the last 30 years there. It's just kind of
that is. And I mean, living there, I just didn't felt that. Here I feel like guys are tough. Like that they're tough. Like they're not, you know, and they have that mentality too. I mean, they're not, if somebody tried to take over, they would defend their country. Every single man would defend their country. It wouldn't be the military. The military's not strong, but every single person would defend their area. And
well, one thing on the military, a couple of my friends were Marines, and they went to Thailand. The Thai Marines are super close with the American Marines.
Yeah, they do it. I've seen them do something in Phuket
all the time. Yeah, and my buddies said they're good. Their Marines are good military. There might not be a lot of them because Thailand maybe, but as a sideline, their military. My buddy said was good.
Okay, well, it's good to know. I mean, I like to.
Yeah. But the other thing is, to your point, you know, I look at MMA, and really there's like 4 pieces of it, and I'll tie us into Thailand, obviously, that show up that are like the way to fight. Kicks are Muay Thai, clearly. They're the best kickers in the world for fighting kicks.
Yeah.
Hands, I think Western boxing, clearly the best thing, you know? Yeah. And then takedowns, man, it's Western wrestling, you know? Whether it's Greco or, you know, and by wrestling, you know, this American folk style wrestling, not the freestyle, because folk style riding time and the leg control, like that is real fighting control, right? And then obviously jiu-jitsu for submissions, which you could, you know, Western wrestling had submissions but lost it. You know, big time wrestling is a fake version of that. That was there, but it's been gone for 100 years. So I don't want to claim that. So the submissions for BJJ, which are in judo, but you know, so really, 1/4 of the fighting puzzle is Thai. Just like 1/4 of it was Western boxing. And that we can't forget that came from them. You know what I mean? And so clearly they have a fighting culture, and that's what came out of it. You know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's that.
Oh, elbows too, right? They don't elbow in boxing, so I mean, Thai elbows are pretty good too.
Oh, Well, and also what's interesting is the clinch. I never knew the Thai clinch. I thought I knew the Thai clinch. I didn't know it until I came here. Like the clinch, and it's funny because in wrestling we're always we're doing this, right? Trying to get underhook,
double underhook.
You're actually doing this, and you're actually pommeling to get that to get that clinch. And man, I got clinched back. Luckily, it was easy to learn because of martial. It's easy to learn, but I didn't even realize like the dynamics of it. I mean, from an engineer perspective, all that I needed to do is learn. Oh wow, a little bit of the leverage. And then how just it was easy to learn how to pommel this way, but I never did. I never did in any of my MMA fights. I wish I had come to Thailand and done like a proper Muay Thai camp once, but unfortunately during my MMA career, I did have the hook shin. I had the kicks. I feel that the kick shin, and it was interesting to learn from Kia that it was actually the kick shin guys that came to Thailand and realized and kind of changed their kicks a little bit. So they actually do have Muay Thai kicks because, that's
No, you're right. But I mean, I'm with you. It's just, yeah. So that is part of it. Yeah, but the Muay Thai kicks are really good, and the fighting culture. The fighting cultures that ended up in MMA, right? Like I said, it's Thai, Western stuff, and Brazil. That's really the main ones.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. That's
by Western, really, I'd say American Western boxing, which is American Europe, but American wrestling.
That catch wrestling. Yeah, I like it more than and also that style wrestling is because there's two parts of the ground. There's the submission, the jiu-jitsu submission, but there's also control and ground and pound, right. And that's going to come from American wrestling, not
folk style.
You don't get that in freestyle.
Guys don't have that.
Yeah, they don't have that
freestyle, right? Freestyle, it's like exposure points. You don't get any riding time, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that the American folk style wrestling is the remnant of guys that were fighting, right? They were basically saying, and you read about guys like Abe Lincoln and stuff. They would wrestle. They have these challenge. Fine, let's wrestle, and they would wrestle like in the middle of the town square, like basically submission wrestling is what it was.
Yeah,
no strikes, but you could take guys down, submit them, hold them. If you could pin them, it was like I won because I held you down. But so you see the remnant of real combat wrestling, right? But and then the Thais, clearly they had a bunch of. Oh, here's one for you. If you ever read on old wrestling old boxing, it's worth it. Until the 1840s, they allowed throws in boxing. You look at old engravings, and they're doing like Greco throws, and they would throw a guy down, and then they had to get up, and I could hit you when you stood up.
Okay, nice, yeah.
Yeah, and they also would stomp on each other's feet and stuff with shoes, So, again, the modern sports like Muay Thai are somewhat civilized. I can only imagine what Muay Thai was like in 1800. You know what I mean?
That actually there's a story about the Muay Thai rules. They changed them because judo guys came over here and were throwing because you get points for throwing. The judo guys were able to. You're not allowed to put your hip into Muay Thai flows anymore because they didn't like how the judo guys were coming over and beating them in this.
Sure.
They were able to, and that's what is cool about styles. Are able when you have rules, you're able to. Certain styles able to identify it and capitalize on it. So it did happen to Muay Thai too. They do have throws now, but they used to have judo style throws. And
I've seen them, but they're more tripping throws, right? Yeah. They don't throw the hip. And to your point, something I did learn when I was working out with Mark is when you get a clean judo throw, and hip on, you're like, I get why they called that the match. Because if you are in a fight in a parking lot and you hip on me, I'm unconscious.
That's it. That's it. That is a knockout throw, not
And so that is legit, a clean, But like when you're bored, though, look up old boxing. There's books on it, and there's engravings, and there's things like it's interesting to see the pictures look much more like MMA with double underhook body locks. It's crazy when you look at it, and then one of the earliest boxing schools in London literally taught pugilism, swordplay, and quarterstaff. That's what the flyer says. Like, that's not a martial arts school, dude. You know what I mean? It's 1750 in London, and you learned how to box, do a sword, and use a stick.
Yeah, it is almost a rediscovery of these martial arts because like Savate in France, the Savate kick, that's like a really I did something with something. It's legit. Like
no, you're right. So all these things, it's always there. In modern boxing, if you watch old fights from the 40s, it is much more like MMA boxing. The gloves, although they look the same size, they were horsehair and not foam.
Yeah,
and you could open them all the way. So you watch those guys, and it's much more like 4-ounce gloves, even and like because they were horsehair, when they get sweaty, that doesn't pad very much.
Yeah,
and the thumbs were detached. Now they sew them in.
Yeah.
So you watch the body work and guys splitting the guard, and you go, 1940s boxing or 30s boxing looks much more like a modern striking interchange in MMA than modern boxing. Like Joe Louis and those guys, you watch them and you go, man, those guys, they couldn't grapple, but they hit really well, and they would do things like punch guys on the arms so that in later rounds you couldn't pick your arms up.
Yeah,
And you're
that's what
like,
the Muay Thai
modern
guys did
boxing,
to me on with those kicks, man.
yeah.
Oh,
So the modern boxing, it's closed cell foam. I can hit you in the arms all day and your
yeah,
arms still work, but it was very common. Also, they allowed a lot of, they didn't call forearms and elbows. So guys would throw a punch. And if
yeah,
they didn't elbow you in the head, they'd let it go. So imagine I go boom and I bring my forearm
yeah,
into your side, into your
yeah,
arms to make your arm hurt. I'm saying just if you ever see
yeah,
old clips, it'll look much more like what you were used to doing in Thai with elbows.
yeah,
I'm just saying, so the 30s and 40s boxers much more like Thai boxing minus the kicks, you know?
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
really it all just full circle to, like you said, fighting cultures. When you remove that from the culture, you remove that outlet for fighting, it just makes people like more and more passive and less likely to stand up. You know,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah. So
even from a
that's
government
interesting. Yeah, what do you get in? So since I've left America, MMA has blown up a lot more.
yeah,
We've also at the same time we've had these feminization too
I
on a lot
know.
of areas. So what where are we? What like just your feel now? Of course, I mean Arizona is different than California. I say Arizona is maybe I mean a little I don't know, but
A little bit. So many Californians moved here. It's not that different now, but I know
yeah,
what you mean. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean, do we have it? Is there enough of a culture, or is it like removed where it's like, oh, like I mean, because yeah, like Muay Thai is like part of like all my like when I taught at elementary schools, it's part of their textbooks and their reading. I mean, it's part of the culture. Is it removed from the culture? There's MMA fighters and not like is there an opportunity to make it a culture where everyone, like all men, at least at some point, kind of mess around
right.
with it, at least kind of get.
Yeah, what I've seen, this is my perspective, is it's kind of what I mentioned about people are much more, they're less exposed to things different, you know. So like in the old days, when I was a kid, you get in fights at school. It was common to have fights in the neighborhood. You didn't get suspended. If it was a fight, they go, well, hey, you worked it out. Right now,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
fights, massive problems. You get sent home, no fighting allowed. You can't settle anything. I feel like as a society, the people that fight, there's a lot of it going on. And then the people that don't, they just ignore it. It doesn't exist to them. It's back to the being
yeah,
separate. There's no more
yeah,
exposure. So we're more specialized. The people that want to fight, there's MMA, there's more
yeah,
opportunities to fight. Those that don't want to fight live their whole life pretending it doesn't exist with their eyes
yeah,
closed. Which is why you have this huge split in America of how do I deal with conflict? Some people are like, well, you got to go meet it head on. You got to go embrace the conflict. That's people that have probably fought in their life at some point. And people like, never just appeal to a third party. Don't fight. Violence never solves anything. And that's like,
yeah,
they believe that's their soul because they've never been faced with
yeah,
having to defend themselves. And so I think that's the same thing. It's an issue because it's just splitting. It's totally bifurcated now,
yeah,
and there's no way to settle things. By that I mean, I'm not saying constant fights and the strong rule is the way, but I meant, you know what I mean? If you grow up in life saying there's never conflict, there's never violence, you just appeal to a third party to call the police, complain to your homeowners association, whatever it might be, you never actually deal with it yourself. It's a problem. Just like if the other side is bad too. I'm the toughest guy in the house. I'm going to get what I want. F you. I run the show, right? That's bad too, And I just feel like that mixing's not there,
yeah, yeah.
And I don't know the answer. It's just specialization. We're becoming multiple societies in one, which causes the fragment.
Yeah. That's
And I don't have a good answer. That's just what I feel. Because like I said, when I was a kid, when I was talking about it, there was more fighting in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right.
School, but there was no MMA and no way to box. You know what I mean? And now you can go to MMA right now and get some amateur fights if you want, get some pro fights, go fight Jim. But God forbid you get into it with some dude at school. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like, and so I think that part's bad. Just because I think it makes a lot of people conflict averse, and then totally conflict averse. And we got to have the ability to deal with conflict and understand that sometimes there has to be conflict. I mean, and sometimes not. It's that whole thing too, like martial arts talk about, which is true. Jordan Peterson says this, if you listen to him at all.
Yeah.
Peterson says, a man who's afraid to fight, I'm paraphrasing, isn't actually anything special. A guy that can do violence and chooses not to that's the man. He's making a choice. You know, if I don't know how to fight, if I'm afraid or can't do it, I'm not choosing to be nonviolent. That's just what I'm stuck with.
Yeah.
But if I'm capable of bringing violence and I choose not to be, that's actually a choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what gets lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Rather be the warrior in the garden.
No, like you said.
Gardener in the war. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people say, oh, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in fighting. Well, you're not choosing anything.
Yeah.
There.
You can't. If somebody fought you, you wouldn't be able to defend yourself. Isn't really. Yeah. That's not something to be proud of or desirable to. Yeah. Right. To a pacifist that couldn't. Yeah. For the reason that they can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
That's not a good pacifist. Yeah. That's not a good position to have. I mean, nobody should want that. I mean, yeah, that's, I guess, I guess that's the underlying issue is I think, I mean, it should be part of I think any culture should have that. And it is, when you train everybody, I mean, how many people that train are those bully people? I mean, they're
not that many.
Not very many, right? I mean, those, by training, it just naturally makes you more pacifistic, actually, and not want to fight, because you realize there are a lot of things that can go wrong, but man, it's nice it makes you feel a lot more comfortable in positions. I wonder, I mean, those, to be like that must be terrifying. Like, I mean, to be one of those pacifists that say you're pacifist, but in your heart, you know that you can't defend yourself. It must be a terrifying way to go about your life.
I agree. I think in my life, some of the people I've been around who were the meanest hearted or bullying in like the emotional or verbal sense, all of them really couldn't fight. You know what I mean? And it doesn't, and like you're saying, that comes from that fear. They have an interaction with you and there starts to be a disagreement and you're disagreeing with me. But if I'm scared of you because I can't fight at all, I start reacting one of two ways. I ball up or I project a bunch of anger. You know what I mean? I belittle you or whatever I might do because I'm fearful. And you're thinking, boy, you're kind of overreacting. I thought we were just disagreeing about where you parked your car or something or something. You know what I mean, right? Or disagreeing, even disagreeing about some minor political thing or something. It's like, wow, you're getting really ragey. But to your point is, I think that comes from, at their core, it's a fear, and that's a thing that, if everybody, did a little bit of combat sports in some way, I think it would help. I mean, it's not for everybody. Not everybody should embrace it or could embrace it, but like you said, the physicality, understanding things, knowing how to do a little bit, it's just, it just comes from confidence or whatever. I mean, I don't know. You're right though. Most of it comes from fear. I mean, I think it just comes from fear, like you said, and then you live in fear, and then it expresses itself in a bunch of different ways. Or what you do is you have some situation. Let's say it's at work between you and I don't know how to fight, and I'm scared, and I suck it up. But then the rest of the day, I'm like, I was so scared, and I was afraid, and then I come home and I yell at my family because I was afraid at work.
Yeah.
But then I can yell at them because they won't do anything about it. And they don't know why I'm yelling at them because I'm yelling about something stupid. It all just shows up everywhere. You know what I mean? That pain, that fear when I am in the moment has to come out somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Whether I start drinking when I get home or I start yelling at people, it's the same answer,
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel that's part of our conflict in life because there's no real, I mean, we disagree, and the only path is I escalate to some crazy way, or I call the cops or something, which is a pretty big escalation, right? I have the county come cite you for something, but I don't know, man. It can make, I just feel like much less handling things personally on a personal level,
Yeah, or letting it get to the point where, it's, we do have guns and stuff, and that changes the dynamic. Somebody who doesn't know how to fight, they might be
going to pull a gun.
Pull a gun.
You're right on that, Chris. If you're that kind of guy, let's just say it's a random event or with a neighbor, and you and I are neighbors, we're getting kind of heated, but we both are confident we're not going to fight because we're just kind of like, hey, we know how to fight, but we're disagreeing. But if I don't know how to fight and I see you getting and you're kind of amped up, I'm scared. I'll pull my gun. Maybe you're right. Now this is escalated into a super bad situation. Right? Versus me saying you should calm down, and you go, yeah, you're right. Right. But if I'm super scared of you, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to just pull my gun. You're right. That's I do think that is part of the there's a quick escalation path, you know, like he goes from nothing to I have to escalate really fast. There's actually a shooting I saw the other day in New York. It was caught on somebody's like cameras in an apartment complex. And you see these two guys get into it, and the one guy pulls a gun and shoots a guy in the hallway, and it's a horrible shooting. But I will say, when you read the article, there had been prior interactions. They were neighbors in the apartment complex, and the one guy was significantly bigger than the other guy and buff. You know, like they're both good-sized guys. The one guy could be about 250, and the other guy was shorter and pudgy and probably weighed about 180. But the other guy was muscular. I'm thinking that the smaller guy shot him. I'm thinking that dude in the moment. I'm not saying it was self-defense, but in the moment he was scared that guy was going to mess him up bad.
Yeah.
And if the dude knew how to fight, he might not have pulled his gun. The situation might have de-escalated after a little bit. I will say the big guy had a pair of scissors in his hand and was like saying, so it was kind of like a knife. My point was like, to your point, that's like, again, if the smaller guy was a mid, let's say the small guy was a D2 college wrestler, right?
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't have been scared. I'll just dump this guy in his head if I have to. He isn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you're right. The escalation's happening a lot of times from not having the confidence and being able to handle the situation, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, there's no easy answers, man. Not that you're asking for them, but it's
I mean, I mean, things get crazy and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun watching America from over here. It's like it's a drama. There's always stuff going on. I mean, the world, not just America. I mean, I feel pretty. I mean, every once in a while something could happen here. We've got some things happen here too. But I mean, like, but I mean, I'm so far out that it's, you know, even the whole coronavirus epidemic really didn't even. I was pretty much just kind of we're low key anyway. Just out here, we didn't really. If you don't go out anywhere, you know, nothing really changes. So it's like. I just see things changing drastically, all these big events, and nothing actually changes out here. So, but at the same time, I don't want to remove myself too far where I'm not in reality. So I got to know I like knowing what's going on. I like this. I mean, I love having this conversation, and I hope you, I hope you make it out here. I mean, I mean, planning out here. That's the best time. December, January, basically this time right now, this year, next year, offers always on the table.
Yeah.
Other times are okay too. It's just hotter, rainier. That's another thing, is it's not rainy during that season. So we actually are still in the rainy season. September's really rainy. It goes into October. By November, the rain has stopped too. So it's not wet, but it's cool. It's crisp. So that's why those are just.
No, I get it, because like you said, you want to go do something, go to one of those villages you mentioned, then it's like downpour in the middle of the day, kind of put the damper on that, right?
Yeah. So if you were to come, you'd want to come to those 2 times. The other non-rainy season is really hot, and that's like in February and March. It kind of is, because then it starts getting hot and no rain. So it's our hottest season are like March and April, and then it'll start raining, and then it'll get hot and rain, and then you have hot and rain. It gets like the heat will trigger rain, whatever. I'm not a meteorologist, but I noticed that I can't explain why, but it does. So it'll get hotter, and then it'll rain, and then it'll get hotter, and rain, and it'll do that all the way until September, October, basically. And then, so basically, we've got those two. That's when my gathering will be. That's when I'd recommend anybody come, but you'd be welcome to come anytime.
Yeah, man. Cool.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna get back. Yeah, it's 1 p.m. here. I think my baby will probably wondering where I am, but I'll keeping contact here and there, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Come out here for real.
No, great, man. It was great talking to you. I love hearing your thoughts. Like I said, I always knew you were kind of a philosophical guy. It's great hearing it, and it's cool seeing the path your life took. Because back when we were training together, I never would have guessed you'd end up in Thailand. You know, on a kind of an orchard in the middle of the countryside. You know what I mean? I didn't. Not that I was thinking where you'd end up, but that wasn't where I was thinking you'd end up. You know?
Yeah.
And it was great talking to you. It's always great training with you back in the day, man. Like I said, Dan and I still talk about you here. We still hang out, you know, and we always talk about the guys, and you always come up. So yeah.
Cool, excellent. Well, I have to have him come on here too, maybe sometime.
Yeah.
He owed me for one of my last fights too. He was coming in. I think one time you didn't come in too. He was coming in at this one gym, or I was out of it. Yeah, there's a couple different times, but excellent. Excellent.
Thanks, man. See you later.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.